All right. Welcome. Are you ready for some Marvel? Super excited to finally be dropping this one. It is huge. We are continuing our Moon Knight exploration. We'll try not to be too verbose getting into it because there's so much here. It is ridiculous. I must also lament briefly the loss of our YouTube audience. I'm sure we'll have probably fewer people tuning in live for this because of that. But oh well, less distractions and we can push forward more confidently. Gabriel, I think maybe I'm coming through on your speakers a little bit of an echo. If you turn it down a bit.
Let's see. Yep.
I think it might be you. But yeah, YouTube did not like my last thing I uploaded with David Whitehead. Me and Gabriel and David Whitehead talking about the cult of the medics. Yeah, so we'll be back on YouTube in a week. It's not totally game over for that, but here we are, episode 4, Moon Knight. Welcome, gentlemen.
Howdy, howdy. So,
Hail.
this thing.
Got your chewing gum ready.
Oh man, I gotta keep that intensity going. You know, it's like you know how Dave Grohl has that fake intensity, so he's always like chewing gum, and so he's like, listen, guys, we're gonna be talking about Moon Knight tonight, and it's episode 4, and this is all about you know, Jungian psychology and look at it yourself. And that's a terrible Dave Grohl, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I wouldn't have known the difference. So great. That's good.
Reminds me of my old football coach. He literally
That's what
grunted.
it was.
Yeah, he would grunt between every sentence. Ugh. He had this incredible like tick that he you know what I'm saying?
It was always some like old cowboy or a football coach or something he was probably having mini heart attacks at the time, and he's like, you guys get up and do 20.
Yep. My football coach was like quintessential in every way. He had the perfectly square head.
I had one of those.
Yep, perfectly square, and his initials were TD, which is like touchdown, So we called him TD Dawson.
We had Coach Creed, and if you got hurt, he'd be like, "Take a salt tablet. You don't need water."
Yep.
Yeah, right. So all that aside, welcome on the Rockfin chat. I see Lucas and Kabir. Good to have you, gentlemen. So, Gordy, you launched us into thinking about Jungian psychology and the unconscious symbolism that is part of this is huge. And I believe that you're right on the money to bring that up for episode 4, even though it applies to the whole series, because this is the beginning, and it makes sense, right? We went through half of the year, metaphorically, the first 3 of 6 episodes, and now we are going into the fall. That is how I see this episode. It is the fall and beginning of the Underworld cycle, which is a huge theme in Egyptian mythology. The dying and resurrecting Osiris, of which any initiate or pharaoh was said to actually embody and become Osiris during their process of going through their initiations, and even when they're entombed and put in their sarcophagi, the inscriptions on there, the hieroglyphics, would refer to the one in the sarcophagus as Osiris. So a lot of that symbolism going on. I got pretty carried away with screenshots to share during this conversation because holy crap, there's just something in every shot. Every frame had symbolism there. So Gabriel, if you've got anything to open up with, I would love to kind of get rolling, but I don't want to take away your shot at introducing some of the big themes that you want us to pay attention to as we go forward.
Well, one thing that was really hitting hard was a lot of that polar symbolism seems to have been an overarching theme throughout. And so I was definitely had Mario Garza on my mind in a major way as I was watching the film, because they seem to be indicating some sort of an exit, exit up above. And there's a lot of being in a maze, being on a path, having to decipher the path. And I think Chance and we mentioned that there's also a lot of patha, or patha,
patha.
The Potter,
patha.
the Harry Potter.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
The PTHA and the PATH is all woven in very heavily throughout. So that's definitely going to be a theme I saw.
I love it, man. Okay, so quick recap, and I'm going to be like really quick. Our heroes, anti-heroes, whatever you want to call them, they have gone through their initiations in London and made it to Egypt, ran around Cairo for a while in the previous episode, and now they have found the location of Amit's tomb. Amit, the crocodile-headed devourer of souls that do not weigh and balance on the scales of Ma'at. And Mark/Stephen, our hero, has lost his powers as Khonshu has been entombed within an Ushabti statue because of his transgression against the other gods by moving the sky clock around in ways that it was not ordained to do, as a way for them to find the tomb that they're looking for. Very interesting parts of the previous episode. So that's where we're picking up. I'm going to just launch us into our first screenshot. And just like every other episode, the initial Whoa, dropped my lucky tiger's eye. Almost smashed my nuts. Anyway, the initial scene is always really important. That first shot that they give says so much. And here we go. What do you guys see here?
Boom, the hangman.
The
Yeah,
hanged
buddy.
man. So this is meant to be Osiris's avatar, if I'm not mistaken, right? This guy who's
Yes.
carrying the statue here.
Yes. I actually took the time to count his steps. And I see, because it was so ritualistic, you know, he's moving with like a lot of emphasis on the integrity of what is clearly a ritual. And like you were saying, it's all about those opening scenes, those initiations. So he takes 28 steps total. And the camera does 2 twists. It twists from upside down to upright, right on his 11th step. And then it pivots. Then the camera pivots on his 22nd step.
Wow, dude, it's that.
What?
It's that. Okay. All right. I'm glad you noticed that. That was beyond me to count the steps. You're a different kind of researcher. I love that. Well, what you say is super crucial. Okay. So first we have the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is a Scorpio card. It can be associated with Scorpio, if I'm not mistaken. And the Scorpio theme in this episode is really important. We've already uncovered that Layla, the female hero of this show, is a Scorpio. The kiss of betrayal and the fall are basically the primary things of importance that occur in this episode. So to have the Hanged Man showing up here, and he's Osiris's avatar, he's silhouetted in all black. Osiris was said to be one of the black gods, like all the other like major sun gods. Krishna means black. That's a whole nother thread we could go into, but to save time, we'll just say the other thing he's depicted as is green, but particularly he's shown as black in this. Kem for Kemet, that means black. Ethiopia, which is ancient India, that means black. So these are the there's a lot here, but we won't maybe belabor that point other than to say Osiris is the lord or the god of the underworld. And I couldn't help but think about with this twisting of the camera, and now this twisting of the camera repeats later, reminds me of the fact that, or at least that we're told that our eyes receive the information of our sight and our vision upside down to what is really true, and our brain flips it for us. I've always heard that. I wonder how you figure that out. It seems to me like just that very idea is trying to maybe subconsciously implant the idea that we are in an underworld, or that we are below something else, or that we're upside down. And when you think about all the inversion in the world today, it does kind of make sense that you would look at the state of the realm as upside down. And so the Hanged Man here, he twists. He continues walking forward. The camera twists and he's upside right. And we get the Khonshu statue here that has the spirit of Khonshu in it. We've talked about in previous episodes what it means to like contain the spiritual essence of a Neteru, which is the Egyptian word for gods, in a statue, that they believed that you could contain specific universal energies and forces in statues and in art that would actually invoke that into the reality, into the world in some way. But not that they actually believed that the statue was literally a god, which is part of the inversion of the show, is telling you that that statue is actually a god, Khonshu, when in the real Egyptian spirituality, these were symbolic representations. They were like terminal access points, or like a desktop icon on your computer that give you access to a particular force that is omnipresent in the universe, but not an actual entity per se. And that's what they're giving us here. We want to say anything else about this statue?
One point I noticed is when they hold these what are they called?
Ushabti.
Ushabtis. I noticed that they hold them on 2 pivots as well. They hold them with one hand flat and the other hand very ceremonious, the way that they that they hold them. Because later, when I believe it's Stephen, when he gets a hold of one of these things, he holds it with the exact same hand posturing. And it just makes me think of the two axial crosses of the zodiac, the solstice line and the equinox line. I think I did that wrong. Equinox and solstice line, just representing, the sacred crossing points being ceremonially preserved in the way that they handle these things.
Oh, that's really good. And the other thing worth pointing out is this Ushabti word that they are using for these statues. It means, or at least the definition we're given, is that these are statues that were meant to act as a magical substitute for the deceased owner when the gods requested them to undertake menial tasks in the afterlife. So they're like little homunculus duplicates of yourself that you use as the word translates to answerer, or that's what they say to, that's what they give us.
Wow.
This was a New Kingdom thing at the point when the difference between the New Kingdom and the Old Kingdom being that the New Kingdom was a huge degeneration of the original Egyptian spirituality. So as you progress further into the New Kingdom, the Netru are portrayed as more and more like tyrannical, like fat, uglier, because the whole system is degrading. And in that sense, it would, why would you need a little statue that would be your magical substitute for when the gods wanted you to do slave work? Well, in the Old Kingdom, in the original, they didn't even think that was how you interacted with the gods in that way. All the stories of the gods back then were symbolic. But here we have the example of fetishism, which is what happens in the late stage degradation of any religion or empire. So this is a fetish, like with a CH, not a SH, but very similar word.
Yes, I've heard you use that recently a couple of times, that civilizations become over fetishized, which is kind of, what the mask represents as well in a strange way. It is a fetish or a talisman. And one thing also that comes to mind is the idea of a person's estate. After they pass away, there's a strange necromantic aspect of our culture, that a person's estate is still active and still has an effect on the world, even after they're gone. And it's just kind of weird to think of that as necromantic, because it serves for insurance purposes, which strangely rhymes with answerer. An answerer and the insurer, the insured and the insurance, kind of, I think, are closely related culturally, and that's just something to consider.
Okay, so let's jump into the next shot that I thought was relevant here. Is we see these statues or these Ushabti that are supposedly representing different gods or entities that have been naughty and thus trapped. But if you look behind them, what are we looking at here? Is that a lamp? Are we talking about jinn, or are we talking about gods? What is going on here? Did you guys catch these magic lamps behind them?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of jinn stuff going on. I mean, the very first episode, we discussed that quite a bit. And what would we say about that now? Is there anything we want to add to this? Or we're just pointing out, I think a lot of these screenshots might just be pointing out symbolism in the shot without maybe overdoing it. We'll see, but that I felt was really relevant.
Yeah, don't they say there's like mythological lamps that never go out? And sometimes they say that they've discovered lamps in these burial locations that are still burning.
Yes. And that was often said by the authors and historians and philosophers of the old world, that these tombs had eternal flames burning in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or some kind of, but that could be symbolic language of some other type of illumination. I've always thought that it might have something to do with like Mercury and horseshoe magnets Think about that word, horseshoe, and where that comes into play. We talked about shoe in the first episode. There's going to be some horse symbolism later. Horseshoe magnets that create a magnetic field, and then Mercury in between that magnetic field would light up and have no fuel that needed to be burned. It would just be lit. So it blows my mind we don't have that type of illumination around today. I'd like to do the experiment myself, but don't have any Mercury on hand.
Yet.
Yeah, yet.
If there's a will, we could do things, right? I mean, this is what we do. We try shit out and see if it works. And so what we're doing here is, trying these ideas and listening, trying to tear this stuff apart. And it's really, before we get too far into this, I just want to say because I was looking at this, watching this thing today, and I'm like, I don't think anybody's possibly looking the way that we are looking at these kinds of things. So I took it upon myself to watch some of these breakdowns. I mean, you're welcome. You don't have to, because they're awful. But I mean, they find the little nerdy Easter eggs and things like that, which are interesting to my 12-year-old, comic nerd. But dude, having guys like you to be able to bounce this stuff off of and really dig deep, I think is a very cool thing. And I mean, I'm just having fun. And the jinn thing, I don't know how much people are really into understanding the genie in the lamp kind of idea, but that's essentially the same technology as a Dybbuk, which they talk about in the book of Enoch a lot, about containing spirits within a lamp or within a statue that's part of most ancient mystical faiths is effigies, using effigies as a power or a controller kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, that's a real thing.
Very, very good indeed. Yeah, and it's not a very nice kind of magic. It makes you think a lot about what we have here in our world that is called AI. Could be a very similar concept, because you're containing something in that black box that we call computers. It is, it's got electromagnetic energy coursing through it in a particular configuration that is in some way reminiscent of biology even. I always thought that maybe these computers we use are like an advanced form of a Dybbuk or a Dybbuk. And of course, we can't forget that COVID word backwards is Dybbuk. Dybbuk. Yeah.
Great call. Great call.
And I feel like we just people like us noticed that when cooties started, and then we're just like, okay, we moving on. But it's like a huge deal in the language that's the word that they gave us.
Yep.
Such a specific spell word.
Which I ran through the Hebrew Google Translate a while back, and it translate roughly. And with translating Google Translate and Hebrew, it's a crapshoot. It's a total crapshoot. One of the results that I got back was that divak means divorce. When you put it in phonetically through Hebrew, it means divorce, which is just pretty interesting. And I should mention just old weave, but bring it, since we're talking about the jinn. My pet name for Joe Biden is J. Obey the Jinn. And I have a lot of reasons for taking that liberty on his name. You take Joe Biden, you take Kamala Harris, you break them apart phonetically, and you reconfigure them very easily to Joachim and Bai Harris, which is much like Joachim and Boaz. But what's really fascinating is that the remaining syllables are Allah and Din, and that's Aladdin. And it was a while back with a one-on-one that he revealed to me that H.P. Lovecraft was obsessed from a very young age with Middle Eastern mysticism and the power of jinn. And so what I think we may be looking at is people who are fluent in that form of mysticism. And I think they are using it as in their call signs in a lot of ways. So just thought I'd throw that out while we're on the Jinn topic.
Good stuff. All right, I'm going to jump us into the next shot. So I did my best to brighten up some of these screenshots, and it still looks like it's kind of dark here. But we have, after that scene, we're shown a scarab on a mound of sand. So first of all, scarab was the symbol for Cancer in Egyptian astrology before it became the crab. The mound is symbolic of the primordial earth that rises up from the celestial waters before there's any creation. And so as a symbol of the sun, the scarab is like Ra here on the primordial mound. So we're seeing some kind of there's some kind of like a rebirth or something new happening here. And it makes perfect sense because we're entering episode 4. It's like we've gone through a gate of sorts, the gate that heads towards the fall, towards winter. I want to read about scarabs here from July's End with Black Swans. Hopefully I do as good a job reading it in the audiobook version that I read it. But rather than just try to summarize this, it's worth getting into this whole paragraph. So the sacred scarab, Scarabaeus sacer or saucer in Latin, was a symbol of creation, generation, paternity, the world, and man. Much of its behavior was observed to mirror the sun. It rolled a ball of ox dung from east to west, stopping at times to navigate using the position of the sun to orient itself rather than using landmarks. The scarab uses the moon to navigate at night. When the moon is new, obfuscated by the sun during the day, the sacred scarab uses the Milky Way galaxy to navigate. So let me put in right there, what just happened was they used the stars to navigate. That was the last time we saw these characters that we're about to see again, Stephen/Mark and Layla. And Dylan here says, if I may speculate, I propose that the sacred scarab's connection to these bodies is due to magnetism, much like how the bumblebee uses magnetism to fly. Even when dead, the bee's corpse still may be levitated with magnetism. The scarab was said to lay eggs in the dung ball and bury it for 28 days, throwing it into the water on the 29th day. The Egyptians allegedly believed there were no female scarabs, hence its comparison to single procreation and godlike death and resurrection. The sacred scarab represents initiation because from the dung, the black, fertile earth, lead, or Egypt, new life is born again, like Moses, and saved from or by the water. Saved from the water, that's something that will happen later in the series, and we'll see why that is if we're not already familiar with it in the audience here. The sun regenerates itself, or appears to be self-sufficient. It is a symbol for the microcosm of God, hence the reason this perceived self-sufficient scarab symbolized the sun. When is the sun highest? What zodiacal sign is that? What element does the sign correspond to? What type of environments do crabs usually live in? Does the water not save them? This is why the symbolism changed from the scarab to the crab. So we'll stop there. There's a lot in that paragraph, but I just wanted to show how relevant and important the scarab symbol is, and it will come up more throughout this episode for sure, and has the whole series, but we hadn't fully fleshed it out quite that well, and now that we're in Cancer season anyway, it feels appropriate. And even that word Cancer, we're going to have to talk about that more etymologically once we get to the canopic jars and such.
Yes, that was a great read. The point of going at it for 28 days and then throwing it into the water, because in the previous scene he took 28 steps, and he's carrying, like a scarab, he's carrying an earth-based element in his hands.
And that's a lunar month as well, 28.
Yes, very interesting. And also the feces aspect, the fact that it's a dung, the Khepri beetle is pushing its dung. I'll just put it out there now. We got more Belphegor coming forward in this weave. There's a lot of that Belphegor, and Belphegor is depicted on the toilet. And I was thinking about, is Belphegor the reason why Sit rhymes with shit
Oh,
because he's the infernal spirit of sloth.
right. He's the sloth. Yeah.
Yeah, so sitting and shitting rhyme for a very Belphegorian reason.
That's awesome. I had no idea that we were going to go this thing was going to find its way. But why should we even be surprised at this point? The synchronicities are fucking all over the place.
Well, in terms of them knowing about Scarab symbolism, and as it pertains to the sun and the death and resurrection and how that's Osiris, it's very clear that this was intentional and not one of those accidental things, in my opinion. Because so what happens here is our guy, Mark or Steven, whoever he is, he's unconscious. And then some bad guys roll up with a machine gun on the back of a Jeep. And Layla's trying to wake him up and he won't wake up. So he's quote unquote dead. He's the dead Osiris, right? And let me show you here. Again, it's a little dark, but here he is. She rolls him down the hill. He rolls down the hill, just like the Scarab rolling.
Shit rolls downhill.
He's rolling. Exactly. Exactly. He's as useless as a lump of shit right here because he's unconscious and he rolls just like the Scarab rolling. It's it definitely looks like he's dead. He's on his underworld journey here. And look, it says that. Looks like he's dead. That's what the bad guys say here in their subtitled text. And then to fight them, Layla pulls out a flare. So I noticed immediately the phallic nature of this flare. And what do we know about the story of Osiris and his phallus? Does anybody want to recap that for us, or should I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so Osiris was the god king of Egypt, and he ruled with his sister wife Isis, and they had he had a brother named Set. Probably review for a lot of people. Set is your sort of Satan archetype, adversary, opposer type dude, and he invites all the other Neteru to a banquet, and he had created a big box, and he says it's a really nice, ornate, beautiful crate, if you will, and he offers whoever can fit into it perfectly gets to keep it. And Osiris gets in it, and it fits him perfectly. And then his 72 co-conspirators, very important number there. Maybe we too many symbolic things to dive into and explain, but maybe you know about 72 out there. They close him up in the box and throw him into the water, into the Nile, where he floats away and is lost, and he can't get out of the box, so he dies there. Eventually, long story short, Isis does find him, and then Set gets pissed off that he's found and cuts him into 14 pieces and scatters those pieces to the wind. Eventually, Isis is able to recover all of the pieces of Osiris except the phallus, so she has 13 pieces. And the phallus, she has a new one, an artificial one created, and through magic, also known as Hecate in ancient Egypt, they are able to temporarily resurrect Osiris, and she uses this magical dildo dong to somehow have an immaculate conception, which is where we get Horus, which is the Jesus or the Redeemer figure of their Trinity. So this is her with the Osirian phallus, the false phallus, the fake phallus, the phallus flare. And she throws it into a box of ammunition that's on this vehicle, and that blows them up and kills them. So she's like returning the phallus to the coffin in a sense, because she throws this on a box. But that's kind of my breakdown of this.
Yeah, and the flames are golden. It brings that golden light as a result. That's an interesting part of it.
Yeah, the scene was, it's weird. Everything's in the dark. You don't really know what's happening. So it's kind of, I think that's on purpose. I mean, everything in here is on purpose, right? I mean, there's very little debate of what I'm like, oh, they could have they could have accidentally put that in, or somebody might have just thought it was cool. That is not what is happening. All of these things are too purposefully done in, and that's with most, modern multi-million-dollar productions. Every single shot is going to be storyboarded and obsessed over in every single thing. There's nothing that's shown on screen that isn't purposeful anymore. But at any rate, the movement of this, it doesn't seem right. Like you don't know how she got from one place to the other, and she was invulnerable to the same things that, like, what she would have, if she'd have done that in the back of that truck at the same time. I mean, she was there doing it when it happened. It would have blown up on her when she was just sitting there, right? That's not what happened. It was like magically it caught on fire. This starts to feel like a dream.
That's a good point. And also, it's not really Isis's role to kill people or to bring death. She's more of a resurrector, healer type. But you could basically call Osiris and Set like the light side and dark side of the same being. And Isis's sister, Nephthys, who is Set's wife, is much the same, like her analog. And I didn't really bring it up in the Osirian myth as I did a really brief summary of it, but Nephthys, she is the one that brings death and decay. She's the Netru that embodies that, or brings that principle to nature, which is required for regeneration to occur. You have to do that. Like when the Nile would flood, for example, during the annual inundation, which brought the miraculous growth and resurrection of nature that the whole Osirian myth and the solar year, or year of our Lord, was all about, helping them know exactly when they're going to get this inundation of the Nile flooding the whole region. Well, it would bring in all this vegetation from further upstream, and this plant material would come and it would just float around in this soggy mess, and it would smell like rot and death and decay. But they actually looked at that as that putrid smell as also purification, and they honored that, and they revered that scent when they had it. So again, the smell of shit as a type of fertilizer agent. So the fact that she kills them with this flare, and that Nephthys helps her sister Isis track down the pieces of Osiris and put them back together and all of that, definitely seems like, when she, especially being that she's Scorpio, which is death, she's literally a Scorpio. We saw that on her passport. She's as much a Nephthys figure as an Isis figure. But since we're looking at this from a Jungian lens with the conscious and the unconscious, the white and the black, the two sides of the same being, anima, animus, that whole chestnut, I do think we can look at her that way, as the Isis and the Nephthys here.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that Scorpio aspect, because we're in the beginning, we are dealing with the Scarab, the Cancerian component. We're in time. But yeah, it's good that you mentioned that she is a Scorpio from her passport, because she ends up stinging them from the backside. She swoops up and gets them from behind. She does the old classic double reverse on them because she throws that torch in the back of their truck, and then they they fall on their own sword, kind of, so to say, in an interesting way. Can you bring that graphic I sent to you, Chance? It's some of the first words that the guys who are hunting her, some of the first words that they say when she's hiding out in the truck right before she finds the torches are very interesting words. Like, I saw someone running. Yeah, this is just me, playing around, being very interpretive with some of the words here. But You know, Esau summoned the ruining. You know, she's about to betray them. It also has the name Hecate in the next line. Check around the truck has Hecate in that phrasing. In the remaining letters, I just dropped down the C and the round. So there's crowned. And troca is to switch, the switching of a crown. And that's what happened with Esau. There was an old switcheroo on who's going to carry the crown from that point on. So it's got that kiss of betrayal all through and through. And so Hecate has 1,000 names. I was reading through her names, and she's got 1,000 names, and it makes 1,000 references to 1,000 things. It's all over the place. But there are a couple favorites that I have, and they help me to recognize when Hecate is in play, and that is she of the two torches. And that is what she does here to trick these guys. She uses one torch to lure them, almost like a matador, where she draws them in and they overcommit to coming to find her. And she uses that first flare as a lure. And then she does a roll underneath the truck and comes up from the backside with the second torch. And then she hits them with the second torch. And that is totally Hecate all the way. In another name that will come up later for Hecate is the far strider or the far darter, because she ends up having to jump over some obstacles later that definitely fulfill that Hecate aspect, the far strider.
Yeah, that's really interesting that it's already starting to throw Hecate in there too, right? Like we could do a whole show just on Hecate herself, the three-faced. She's also Striga. She's also associated with owls. She is the goddess of magic and spells. Anyway, we gotta keep moving because we got a lot of shit we gotta get through.
Yeah, and Hecate, for the record, that's Nephthys in a different tradition.
Yeah. I don't remember where I was going to go, but the scene. I don't know. Okay, so this is the first scene that I noticed is directly referring to the whole Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones things. Like they're hitting beats and tropes in that are the same beats of those movies right there. That's perfectly pulled from where the Dr. Grant is essentially the same character, Stephen Grant. Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park lures away the Tyrannosaurus Rex with the flare. So that's the first one. And then it just essentially starts mirroring Indiana Jones for later.
I heard that they actually shot on the exact same location.
Oh, did they?
Yes,
that would make sense.
Yes, here in a minute, we will be on site in the same spot where they shot scenes from Indiana Jones. And they did that on purpose because they wanted to hail back to our, early memories.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch that, guys. That's really good.
And it's referencing that movie the cheesy movie. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. I mean, they straight up tell you that that's part of the situation later on. Okay, so after she blows these dudes up, he wakes up. Stephen/Mark wakes up. I guess he's Stephen right now. And so he's at this point, because she's returned the phallus, or she's, it's gone off. The phallus has gone off. It exploded. The flare. So she, symbolically what happens next is Horus the Younger is born from that. And so right now, I mean, I'm not saying he's always Horus the Younger, but to me, I think they're calling back to the Osirian myth because he wakes up and the very next thing that happens is you see a shot of the dawn, the sun rising. So in Egypt, the sun had multiple forms. In the rising, it was Horus Ra. which was Horus the Younger, and that's Horus the Child as well. It's the dawn. So
Yep.
the next day dawns.
Yeah. Well, one quick weave on the scene where he wakes up. He's behind her, and she turns and she just looks at him and she says, "What?" And as subtle as that seems, the end result of the burning process of alchemy, the end result, the ash is white, and he is wearing white. So he is a witness to what she just did. He's wearing white, and her only response to his witnessing her is what? And then they get in a white truck and start driving across the countryside. So there's a lot of that alchemical white ash ingredient indicated in like 3 or 4 ways there, just in a couple seconds.
There's characters with white and black shown together repeatedly in this episode. And then there's the tertium quid that's red. And that comes up more than once. So yeah, they get in this car, and let me bring this up. Here we go. Got Mark talking to Steven through a dirty mirror. Again, we continue with that MK Ultra mirror symbolism. So they back up. They have this talk in the vehicle where Mark or Steven said, "We made a deal. Once we were done with Khonshu, Mark would disappear." Steven tells Layla this. And Layla says, "You made a deal that he would disappear from my life." And then Steven says, "Hadn't he disappeared from your life already?" So again, this is just calling back to the play of Isis losing Osiris. He's missing like Mark. And she says the suit was his best feature anyway, and now he doesn't have that. So he's lost his powers. He's emasculated. The phallus is missing, whatever you want to say about that. He doesn't have his birthday suit. So then we move forward from there, unless you guys want to jump in. If I'm ever moving us too fast, just tell me to back up, because we have a lot of ground to cover. Here they are. They're entering the canyon where Amit's tomb is, one in white, one in black. And what do we see here? A high ram. And if we know the mythology of Hiram Abiff, this is where we're starting to really get some Masonic symbolism. In my opinion, this high ram is letting us know that we're about to enter into the 3rd degree of Freemasonry, in my opinion. So I see, Gabriel, you just shot me something, and you just let me know when you want me to bring that forward.
I think the goat is telling, I think the way they are using it, maybe as direction, is they're associating the goat with Harrow. Because whenever Harrow...
With who?
Harrow,
okay.
When he's around, there was a goat, like there was a goat in the last episode where they're walking through the cult, and he's just like, "Oh, goat." And he was with Harrow. And I think you're right that Harrow's the Mason, the Templar connection.
Nice. Yeah, because the first goat was in with the Harrow's community where everything was comfortable. There's food and people. It's like that. The first goat stays in the temple, stays in the home base, and this is definitely the scapegoat because it's the second goat. It's out in the wilderness. That's totally on point. Which is where this is very profound, because the Khepri beetle is the etymological root of the Yom Kippur ritual. And so the Khepri beetle and Yom Kippur are hailing back to their Egyptological root for sure. So yeah, I totally agree with that this is the scapegoat. And this is the scene right now when they're walking in this dried up riverbed. This is the location that the Indiana Jones was shot in. And so this is the part where they are going through that old...
Find the Holy Grail as the third one?
The Holy Grail. Yeah, you got it. It's the third. Yep.
Is that a canyon in Jordan? Isn't that where it is? Because
That sounds right.
Because didn't they shoot it in? I don't know where they shot Moon Knight, but the third one wasn't it? Yeah, hi. It was shot in near Petra, right? Or in Petra. I mean, the one scene is where they actually go into Petra, into the.
That's a great point, and that is allegedly the spot where Jesus, you know, his opening scene at 33 years old. That's where he steps on the scene. So it does have an initiatory value in that they're on location near the opening scene of the Christ walking along the Jordan River, which I have heard is correspondent with a Uranus, Euradinus, Uranus, which is a constellation, a river in the heavens, in the sky. It's a constellation river. So the Jordan in the Uranus River is correspondent to Jesus by the Jordan is the Orion. And Orion is located right next to Uranus. So Jesus by the Jordan is Orion by the Uranus River.
Wow.
Yeah. But I cannot help myself because I see a lot of Old Testament information actually lining up a little better with American geography. So I took some liberties with theorizing that we might be actually talking about a correspondent location to the Mississippi River, because the Mississippi and the Nile, I see them as interwoven in Old Testament mythology. And that is to say that I believe that there was a first Exodus that happened here in North America, the Hyksos Exodus, and that the Exodus in Egypt was Exodus. It was the second Exodus that took place. So I like to always kind of flush out that possibility that they've taken the two Exodus stories and meshed them together. And so the graphic I sent you, Chance, has my Tarot Tories work on there. And nice, yes. So this goat god is apparently named Khnum, Khnum, is an Egyptian goat god. And I find him very correspondent with the devil card, which I place in New Orleans.
This is also Ptah, by the way, just for the record.
Yes.
There are many versions of names for this entity.
Yes.
And Egyptologists will act like they're all different things, but if you heard Nephthys, Nuphis, Khnum, Ptah, it goes on. There's a lot, but the key is that he's the potter.
Right.
And he created the physical forms of the world and the human beings from clay on the potter's wheel. Sounds a lot like Adam being created from the earth, the clay.
Yes. And that there it is again, the Ptah, because they're on the path right now as they walk through this dried up riverbed. And so I just made this graphic to kind of correspond that location, that dried up riverbed that is forging a path, is very correspondent with the Mississippi River. So I just thought I would bring that forward. And the Mississippi River does look like the menorah, as does the House of Representatives, looks much like the menorah. And it has that pathway cutting right up the middle. And the middle candle is called the Shamir, which means the servant or the helper. So I thought I would just kind of throw this all together, that while we are clearly in Egypt in the film, it does have correspondence heavily with Mississippi and my territories map right there at the gates, the bottom gate there. And you can see the devil card has the goat up above and the man and the woman down below, which is what is happening in the scene. The goat is up above, exalted, and they are walking underneath the archway of the goat.
They sure are. Wow.
And I wanted to bring forward the Masonic tracing boards of the 3rd degree.
Mm.
So this is one of the things you are meant to study before you become a master Mason, 3rd degree Mason. And I thought this was relevant because we're going to be seeing some sarcophagi, and the theme of the death of the master or the hero in this is really important. We would need a whole episode, and I would need to study more and understand the ciphers on this thing before I could tell you what they all mean. But some of the symbolism, the head is buried towards the west and facing the east where the rising sun is, representing the resurrection, Horus resurrecting. We have the 3 5s, which gives you a 15, which is the devil card, but also they're symbolic, as far as I know, of the weapons used by the 3 bad guys who murdered the master Hiram Abiff. There's a lot of other symbolism in here, but the acacia tree is also where Moses, or the initiate, receives the burning bush initiation from Jehovah.
Nice.
I wanted to just show that, and here's even on the one on the right, there's even like a lamp of sorts here, or an urn. Anyway,
Nice.
That's, and here you have, like, there's the commandments as well down here on this one.
Right.
These tracing boards are like PowerPoints of the 18th century. There's so much information on one of these.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You know, the tablets always remind me of Aries as well. The way that they have that the arching shape to them.
Well, and also Moses receiving the tablets represents a transition from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries.
Right, right. Yes. And Gordy, aren't your owls big fans of the acacia?
Oh yeah, that's the home tree, man. Acacias.
That's great.
Yeah, which is also, they think, I've heard it said, is the crown of thorns, because the thorns on an acacia are brutal, man. You get those through a crock, man, your foot is gone. Not that I know that would happen, but I'm just saying that when
you'll be like Harrow with his glass-filled gators.
Dude, it was so, you know the scene in Army of Darkness where the little ashes ram the nail up through his foot, and he does that. I know for a fact that is the exact same sound one would make when steps on an acacia. Anyway,
nice. So
yeah, acacia.
My next weave is retroactive, but I think it's important that while we're still talking about that goat, I just want to point out that the very next scene, like, you hear the goat, and they cut directly to an extreme close-up of a tuft of dried grass. And it's so close to the camera that it's almost as though they are implying that you are the goat and that you are eating the grass, that you should eat the grass. And I find this diabolical in certain light, because as much as we call people the sheep, and we say that we're not animals, and the herd mentality and stuff, what do people have? What is their primary obligation every weekend? We go mow the grass. We tend to the yard. And it just sucks that there is a harsh truth in our culture that we are obsessed with grass. It kind of hurts, but it's true.
Man, so you hit it on the head there. It's stupid too, because the irony is for the goat trimming your lawn, it's at least food to them. And our yards are filled with nothing but resource wasting, time wasting, ego stoking attempt to have what the neighbors have, when we could be filling that space with food that is actually food for us. It's like, if we think that we're so high and mighty in our technological age, how come we haven't figured out the simple ability to just like have food everywhere all around us available permanently without needing to do all the stuff that we do, slave stuff, to trade for money to get the food, right? Goats are smarter than us in that way. They're way more adapted to their environment. We have to jump through all these dumb hoops to get fed.
Yeah. I thought of you, Gordy, out there in Arizona, in the fact that you've had a lush year where the grass is growing, the animals are coming back. It's been lovely, but it kind of foreshadows, a tinderbox could be the end result. As fun as it is, that it could be setting up the wildfires for years to come in a scary way. So I thought of you with that extreme close-up of the dried grass.
Yeah, it's never far from our thought, that's for sure. When you start seeing the mountains are pretty dry, yeah, fought grass, man. Especially that buffalo grass. It chokes out all the desert stuff too. Yeah. Zero scape everything, man. Everything's zero scaping except for the onions in my planter in the backyard. And that's about it. I got rocks. Oh, I have cactus fruit. I plucked a bunch of that stuff this weekend, which I got cactus in my foot again. I have got to stop wearing these stupid shoes like Vans out doing yard work because I am ruining my feet. So let's go back to the reason we're here is Moon Knight thing, right?
Yeah, the Moon Knight thing. The next scene here, they enter the camp of Harrow's.
Well, I got one more quick little weave on the grass thing because it's strangely like generally they prefer to foreshadow. They set you up for a thing and then it is fulfilled in the future. Well, this one has like a reverse fulfillment that is kind of hard to catch. So you got it. This is it. So the first thing they show after the goat is a close up on this grass, and then the camera dials in so the grass is in the foreground, and then it dials past the grass, and you see the two of them walking onto the cliff's edge. And that is very interesting because we have the Yom Kippur ritual in our mind. And they come up to the ledge of the cliff, the two of them, and they look down over the edge and they see the encampment down below. And that is just really strangely, it just has all of that Yom Kippur context, because in just a couple minutes, Mark and Steve are going to have a little argument in the tent, and I believe Mark is threatening Steve, and he says, I will throw us off a cliff if you touch my wife, if you touch her. And I just found that really interesting that we just got done seeing the goat. We just saw them walking up to the cliff's edge, and we did see in previous episodes the sacrificing of a kid off of a cliff's edge. So they're hinting at that Yom Kippur aspect, which, by the way, Yom Kippur takes place at the end of September. So it is in that the decline, the falling aspect of the year. And there's the two camels, 33, Gimel.
Yeah, two Gimels, and the high priestess card with the Gimel Hebrew letter on it, and a camel in the Thoth tarot, actually. Just thought that was interesting. They had to pass through these two towers, two pillars, two humps of the camel before they go on, but they decided to scavenge this place for supplies. And this gave me the idea to look at the Masonic tracing boards. Actually, he's got this table in front of him, and there do appear to be some kind of tools on the table that made me think of Masonic tracing board tools. They're not identical, but
big time.
In here, he's looking at his reflection, and that's when they have this conversation about I'll throw him off a cliff, which I keyed into that as well. That's definite scapegoat symbolism, throwing the scapegoat off the cliff.
In response, he says, if I need a protein shake recipe, I'll call you. And that was screaming placenta to me. The fact that they are in a tent, they're in a Bethlehem, they're in a Mikbeth, the son of the house.
Yeah, this is a tabernacle. This is what a tabernacle means, is a tent like this that you can put up somewhere in the desert.
Yes. So for him to dismiss his higher self, his daemon, whatever, and say, if I need a protein shake recipe, I'll call you. He's like trying to be quippy. But the fact of the matter is that is exactly what the placenta is, should be, in my humble opinion.
A protein shake or a higher self? Yeah.
I found that. I think it's just fascinating how the more dismissive they are, the more passive or the more blasé that they are about certain things, the more I pay attention, because that's laying cover for some of the most profound ingredients. So I couldn't let that one go by.
And so she's grabbing these torches, and I love that you had in your screenshot as she's picking up flares that Hecate is she of two torches. That's Nephthys again. She's grabbing more torches, more flares, more phalluses here. She's gathering phalluses, just like the dark goddess do in terms of, castrating her members. Gordy just said it's 7:07 p.m. for him on 7/7. Well, it's 9 here. Let's move forward.
That's awesome.
I love that you grabbed that, though, the she of two torches. That is so Hecate. Hecate. Okay, yeah. And just in case we weren't sure about, are those torches, phalluses, things that she removed from her members as a high priestess of Hecate, Heka magic? Heka means magic in Egypt, by the way. We'll talk about Heka more later on as it becomes important. But here is the next thing they show is a bloody freaking scalpel. An instrument that you might use to do the castration ritual. And it's not just any scalpel. It is like a ritualistic scalpel.
And I have to point out, look at the hay. It's got the dried up grass right next to it. That's what triggered me to look backwards 5 or 10 minutes in the film and be like, so right as they were putting the grass in our face, so we see the goat, then we see the grass, then we see them on the cliff's edge. And then when they come back into the tabernacle, into the temple, there is a bloodied knife, which would be the tool they would use to kill the first goat, the preferred goat. And there's that grass is kind of correspondent with that goat ingredient. So I just had to point that out. Why else would they sprinkle grass next to the blade? It's very powerfully correspondent to the Yom Kippur ritual again.
I could not agree more with you on that. So then we have this scene where, in case we weren't sure that they're trying to get us to think of phalluses, she is okay, so here's Stephen, and you see in the scene that she's handling his crotch area and her head is down. She's bent over in front of him and he's making this face. And he says, I feel like I've been waiting my entire life. I've been waiting for this my entire life, I guess, to get a BJ. But then he continues and he says, this adventure, I mean. And she says, we want what we never had, as she's tightening up his harness around his junk. And then she leans in and smells him all up close and says, you smell like him. And which point Stephen reveals that Mark was pushing her away to keep Khonshu away from her because Khonshu wants her to be his next avatar. And Mark doesn't want that to happen. And then this is it. Super important moment right here. Not because it's a cheesy romantic moment, but because it actually feels pretty out of place. There's not a lot of romantic subplot going on at all between Stephen and Layla, or even Mark and Layla for that matter. It's why is this kind of forced moment here? It looks forced, right? Because they needed to insert this because this is the kiss of betrayal. Oh, she says also, nice. I want honesty, not protection. And anyway, then they kiss. She's Scorpio kissing Stephen, betraying Mark by kissing Stephen, the kiss of betrayal. And what happens after Scorpio and the sky clock? No offense, Scorpios. This is just the symbolism of the sky clock. Then there's the fall. He falls into the tomb. And while he's falling, if you listen closely, the subtitles don't give it to you, but it sounds like he's crying, "Mommy," while he falls. I listened to it repeatedly to be sure about that.
But I mean, which is appropriate. I mean, he's the emasculated character, which is very Jungian too. There's the, the intellectual, the warrior, and we'll go through that later. But we're starting to see these things because, you're talking about her being the phallus in that relationship. She is the one. She's the masculine energy in that relationship, right?
Depends on if you're talking about Mark or Stephen, but Stephen is definitely the effeminate one.
Right, Stephen. Yeah, that's what I mean. But she kisses it. I mean, in that scene, she's kissing, or Stephen is kissing her. It's Stephen, not Mark.
Yep.
Which is what makes it a betrayal. What he literally just asked Stephen not to do.
Right.
Totally. I love that you mentioned the BJ because I didn't catch that there's like a
right, because we just saw two Gimels.
Yeah.
The high priestess, the B and the J, Joachim and Boaz. And that's the guarding the gateway for them to go into this next, they're going through the gate of winter here.
Yep. And they're entering into the temple. But then him falling also is like it has a birth ritual, implied because, he's got the tether, much like the umbilical cord. And he goes through he takes a hard fall. So it's like a rough go as far as birth rituals on his system. So that's crucial. And then because she's in there a little bit longer than him, she goes and she writes a little symbol in the sand on the foot of the two sphinxes that are there in the gate. And that symbol that she writes, it actually means something in maybe Aramaic or Egyptian, but it absolutely looked like a 31 to me. It totally looked like a 31 backwards. She writes it backwards. She starts on the left when she writes it, and it looks like a 3 first and then a 1 afterwards. Yeah, nice chance. Nice.
I was thinking 13 as well, because in this point of the zodiac crossing through Scorpio, there is also the Ophiuchus, the 13th sign.
Bingo.
The Ophiuchus, and they just had a kiss too.
And she says that she did that for her dad, and supposedly that's his initials.
Maybe in Arabic or something.
Arabic, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's important is where she's inscribing this in the sand. We have these two lions that have been standing guard for centuries, is what they think. And this reflects the Eastern origins of the Egyptian cult, because even now today, they still do this in Asia, in some places where they have lions guarding the temple or guarding the palace or guarding some kind of gates. And we've talked about that. Even gato, the word for cat, sounds just like gate. But what I found interesting too is that the lion-headed Egyptian deities that are most prominent are Sekhmet and Bastet, which are like a different city's version of Nephthys and Isis. And Sekhmet is actually the one that does the major healing of bringing that which is unconscious to consciousness. And she's like ferocious and terrifying, and symbolic of like the pain that you go through during healing. Whereas Bastet is the kind of gentler aspect of healing, the comforting aspect. So what happens though? He just had a painful fall, and then he sees Sekhmet, and then they have a cathartic moment of healing, of bringing to consciousness the wound that she has around her father. So definitely some Jungian stuff right there. Yeah. He died for his dream of archaeology, is what they say about her dad right there. And then they move further into the tomb.
Oh, hold on, Chance.
Oh yeah, sure.
I got a little weave on that scene. So the fact that the symbol was a 13 or a 31, either way, both have a very strong relationship to the Belphegor symbol because it is 31 digits long. It is, if you bring up that graphic, I've got a visual. It's just, it kind of.
1331 is 11 times 11 times 11.
What? What?
It is. 1331 is 11 times 11 times 11. If you go to Gematrinator, our buddy Derek's website, and start looking into the number 1331, he's done so much work on 1331. It's ridiculous. Did you know the first multiple of 666 is 1332, which is just one more than 1331? And the phrase in Jewish gematria, the phrase 1331 eclipse equals 1331. He basically calls this number the eclipse code. We'll just say that. He goes deep into work on that. And even like November 30th, 1130, if you will, that's a 1331 in Jewish gematria. I'm just kind of looking at some of his blog posts about this, but we probably can't go into it too much. However, there's like a huge amount of work he's done on 1331 as a eclipse code, and that makes perfect sense. The sun and moon symbolism there.
Yes. Okay. This is glorious, man. Okay, we're learning on the fly here. This is awesome. So she is in black.
I gotta read one thing from this. I'm sorry, but then I'll let you go.
Yeah.
On his blog post, he points out that Revelation 6:12, which is a 666 in a way, because 12 is two sixes. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. That verse has an ordinal gematria value of 1331. And the word black does not appear in the Bible until Leviticus 13, chapter 13, verse 31, referring to black hair. So that's we'll get lost in the weeds. If we went into the eclipse code too much, but it is a huge part of Gematrinator's work. You might really like it.
Oh man. Okay. That is awesome. That is just awesome. There is so much in that. Okay. So now that you've brought the eclipse into the picture, the fact that she's in black and he's in white, that makes him much like the sun, in the fact that she moves in front of him, even when she's rigging his harness. She's harnessing him. That has an eclipse component. The kiss of betrayal has an eclipse component. Even the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, when they lined up there for the election, that was, in my assessment, that is Biden is Jupiter giving Trump, who is Saturn, a kiss of betrayal in an eclipse conjunction. So conjunctions and eclipses are very powerfully enacted through theatrically through a kiss. So that's awesome that you brought the eclipse in the picture. I freaking love that. Thank you. I got a lot more to build out on that. Damn, there's so much to this 1331. Could you bring
a lot of Gematrinator has an entire post about Donald Trump and the 1331 eclipse. He's made videos about this.
I got to get in on his stuff. I do not
just type in your Google machine someday Gematrinator 1331 and start getting into those articles, and you will have a field day.
Oh man, I believe it.
He if anybody has a brain like yours, is that guy.
Totally, yeah, even more so. I mean, his gematria stuff is nuts.
Well, you get symbolic literacy in areas that are not his expertise more generally, but he's got the gematria on lock. He's literally the letters and numbers guy. Love that dude.
And the fact that it's Revelation 6:12, that's the 216. That's TAX. That's my tax code right there. And I didn't even take it biblical. I have not even gone biblical with it. There's so much to say. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that gift, Chance. That's good stuff.
Yeah, don't forget to Google Gematrinator 1331 and have fun.
Wow. So I made a little graphic of Oedipus where he is solving the Sphinx riddle. And
and they reference the Sphinx here. Marx or Steven says something like, I feel like these are going to come to life and ask me a riddle for passage or something.
Yeah. Can you pull that up? Because now I'm looking at the riddle of the Sphinx in a whole new way, which here in a little while, I did a show with one-on-one and a lovely young lady named, I believe it is Carla, and I forget her last name because I'm horrible with names. But we talked about the Sphinx, and she has brought new layers to the Sphinx riddle to my attention. But I don't want to get off track here. I just want to stay the course. So as he's marveling at the two sphinxes at the gates, the gatos of the gate, he says these lines. He says, so if they sprang to life right now and asked me a riddle for passage, I'd be thrilled. Then he says, I'd shit myself, but I'd be thrilled. And that just hit the mark. That hit the bull's eye in my ear because he's mentioning feces. He's mentioning the shit again. And that is Belphegor's signature ingredient. And so I pull up Belphegor, who is summarized with the concept of sloth, but he is always depicted on the toilet, sitting down at your most thoughtful moment, doing minimal work and optimal reward for minimal work, taking a dump. There's nothing more rewarding than taking a dump.
For some people, it's work.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the consistencies in that artwork, even from the Middle Ages. Like, is that he has to suffer for it. He's depicted as like sweating and having to like he's shitting out bones. Like, yes. Seriously, shitting out bones.
Yes,
and
too much cheese.
Not enough fiber, you know.
Well, this is where
date sugar, but he's smoking a lot of times he's smoking a cigarette, but he's always holding his tail.
Well, nicotine's a laxative. It's probably helping.
Right.
Well, in the Mexican velvet paintings of him, he's always got like a cup of coffee and a cigarette and and he's like sweating like it's like
well, this is where
my word.
This is putting the toil in your toilet. When you go to the toilet is where they let you toil.
Yeah, work for that shit, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I just had to weave all of that in because the riddle of the Sphinx and apparently and Belphegor and Sloth are all right there laid out to bear. So yeah, I just had to bring that up because that freaking Belphegor just keeps popping up.
All right, so you guys will let me know if this is too loud, but I had to turn a fan on. You're talking about sweat, and it's super freaking hot in here. Don't get enough air circulation because I have to leave the door shut to keep the pets out. Anyway, all that aside, they go forward into this next scene, and they realize that they are in a maze. It's amazing. So they're befuddled by the labyrinth, and I've talked about this a little bit, but labyrinths are symbolic of the circuit of the sun, and that going around the pole star thing. The fact that there are 6 paths, they say, to this labyrinth around a middle point, that is the Star of David or the Megan star. 6 points around 1. They're in the middle of it right now. So 6 is hex. It's a hexagon, hexagram, hexa. You see the phonetics there? And this whole structure is said to be an eye of Horus, which is interesting. Here's something that they say that I guess is probably accurate, that they give us this idea of the eye of Horus representing the 6 senses of smell, sight, thought, hearing, taste, and touch. which is interesting. He also says Amit's final avatar was a bloody pharaoh. Bloody pharaoh. Yeah. Then they decide to follow the path that is related to the tongue, which is this spiral here coming out of the bottom of the Eye of Ra.
Which
I
looks
found interesting
six.
too is, yeah, it's a 6. Exactly.
The tongue is a 6 in itself.
Thank you. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. And then
again with Scorpio is the generative organs, the sexual organs too, is what brings the fall.
Nice.
Yeah. So not that I'm saying that that's bad, but that's just the symbolism that the priests gave humanity forever. Then we get this reflection here of the Eye of Horus on the ceiling, back to more like reflective symbolism. I don't even know how you do that. How could shining light on some sand that you drew a picture and cause this to happen? I thought this was really weird.
Well, unless the sand is on a mirror, and when he drew it out, the light from you see the light from his torch, because he's got one of those kind of old school curved ones. He's holding that way, and it's reflecting from the mirror up, which is interesting to me too, that there's purposeful a mirror that he draws the eye in.
Okay, interesting. And so the eye above is the left eye of Horus.
That would be, one's the right. It's the
so the right
itself.
eye is the sun and the left eye is the moon in this symbolism. It makes sense that the moon then is the reflection up at the top.
You know, one thing that Gordy, when you mentioned the shape of their flashlights, that brings to my mind the standard depictions of Yaldabaoth, who is the cat-faced, or no, excuse me, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Abraxas. Some of the traditional images of Abraxas, where he has the face of a cat, the body of a man, and generally wings, and he's wrapped up in a serpent, which, by the way, that is Deborah Burke's. If anybody is wondering, Deborah Burke's is a perfect embodiment of Abraxas, and you can futz with her name, and it comes out pretty obviously. But generally, Abraxas is depicted holding an L-shaped implement, you know, like the writing. What is it called? It's like a 90-degree writing crop, much like a writing crop, and it's actually a Hebrew letter. And I'm a little iffy on what letter it is, but I just wanted to point that out, that the shape of their flashlight is much like what Abraxas is often depicted carrying, that upside down L tool, whatever that is.
Kind of like an adze tool.
Yeah, kind of like an adze tool.
The opening of the mouth ritual comes up in this episode later.
Yep.
Interesting thing I learned about Abraxas recently was that gematria logically in gematria it's 365. So it's Abraxas is a year of our Lord, if you will.
Wow.
It's the whole wheel. And
that's CON in ordinal reduced, CON. So all the things con have a 365 in them.
Which is not that different phonetically than can, which we're about to explore. CAN. CNN.
Can you pop up the one I sent to you, Chance? Just a little weave on what we're seeing with that Eye of Horus on the ceiling, because this is where like all things Mario Garza were just popping out everywhere I looked here, because they kept saying amazing, and we have an eye in the sky up above them, is very powerfully indicating to me this. The Polaris, the pole star. And she even floats this question. It goes unanswered. It's almost like she's asking the viewer. She's really not, she's just musing these thoughts. She doesn't expect an answer. It's, you know, it's what do they call that? When they don't really want an answer? It's
Rhetorical.
Rhetorical.
That's it. She's rhetorically saying, what would they be shooting at? And what do people shoot at? They shoot at a bullseye. The bullseye, the target of a bullseye is what you shoot at. And then they are also repeating the phrase amazing and playing around with the concept of the maze. And so I put this little
You nailed
graphic.
it here. This is
Yes.
the spiral around the pole star is the labyrinth. That's what it symbolizes in astrotheology.
Yes. Yep. So I just I thought I would take that rhetorical question and go ahead and answer it.
Nice, man. Amazing. Okay, what's our next scene here?
Okay, we're looking at the Hecate priests
Right.
on this wall here.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So Hecate is also a deity, but also the concept of magic and medicine. The magi and medics are the same. We've talked about this before. Pierre Sabak does some really good etymological breakdown on that. So it's the word for magic, but also it existed before duality had yet come into being in terms of it being a deity. So it's like kind of the ancient word for the vital force. It has the word ka in it as well, which is literally like your life force energy. It's the hey ka, right? Vav hey, yod hey, vav hey. There's two hays. So the Hecate is, these are apparently Hecate priests, which is really weird. I'm going to just read this. The Old Kingdom pyramid texts depict Hecate as a supernatural energy that the gods possess. The cannibal, there's the word can we're about to explore. The cannibal pharaoh must devour other gods to gain this magical power. Eventually, Hecate was elevated to a deity in his own right, and a cult devoted to him developed. By the time of the coffin texts, Hecate is said to have been created at the beginning of time by the creator Atum. Later, Hecate is depicted as part of the tableau of the divine solar barge, which is the boat. It's the Argos that the Argonauts ride, as a protector of Osiris capable of blinding crocodiles. Then, during the Ptolemaic dynasty, Hecate's role was to proclaim the pharaoh's enthronement as a son of Isis, holding him in his arms. He's said to be the son of Khnum, the ram-headed god that you showed. There's a lot of different versions of Hecate. Sometimes it's a force, and sometimes it is a he, and sometimes it's a she. There's a lot to this. But the cannibalism thing is what I wanted to point out, because what we're going to see next here. Oh, this is the solar barge, though. I got to say that.
Yeah.
This is the solar barge. Whenever you see the boat is the symbol of the yoni, and the mast is the symbol of the lingam or the phallus. And so that's more pole star symbolism as well.
Right. That even reminds me of what we were talking about with how they hold those Ushabtis, that the one hand is the boat and the other hand is the mast. It has that masculine feminine again. That's can you zoom in a little? I guess we can see the cats. Everybody can see that they're wearing leopard skin, right?
Yep.
That
was the
Champ.
garb of the priest class in ancient Egypt.
Right, because they're educated. They're educated. They're the educated ones. And even the word Hecate priests, that sends my alarm bells blaring because of the HP. We call them high priests today. H.P. Blavatsky, H.P. Lovecraft. All these people were Hecate priests. They were claiming that priest mantle. And it's literally a mantle. They're educated with the mantle of the high priest, HP.
Very good. So then he sees this chopping block of sorts with fresh meat on it, fresh blood, body parts. So this is definitely like making you think of the cannibalism thing. Someone's been butchered here. And then we see these canopic jars. So this is the point where we need to start asking some questions like, why do so many, what is the link between all these words that have the can in it? C-A-N. This is Cain. This is the canopy or the hood of the cobra that is shown over the head or over the top of many deities. And this is, you see this on the sarcophagi, the cobra, and you see it with Brahman in Hinduism. Let's see if I can find an image. I didn't pull one up. Didn't have one ready to go. Just know that that's a symbolism in Hinduism too. This hooded cobra hood, the hood of a cobra hooding the head of the deity or the divinity. I also found it really weird that, but not so weird, that when I searched the word Hecate on Google, the top result was a cannabis dispensary in Massachusetts. Hecate.
Man, dude, aren't you finding that everywhere?
Cananubis.
Wow.
Bingo.
So,
wow.
We're talking about dogs and we're talking about serpents when we're talking about the can and the Khan being the ruler, the Cohen being the priest class or the actual name for priests in Hebrew. Cohen is also a word that refers to a dog, I believe, in Hebrew. Cohen is a riddle in Zen. And look at this. He finds on the table freshly filled canopic jars holding the organs and snake skins. So what is it that what's the jar that holds your organs in your body vessel? It's the skin, which is derma, which is an anagram for dream. This whole show has an extremely dreamlike quality to it. We see also that there's a close-up of actual skin of a human arm, a right hand, that's been grafted with snakeskin. What we're talking about here is the grafted bloodline, the brotherhood of the snake, right? Stephen even mentioned something about he mumbles something about self-regeneration when he's looking at this. The snake shedding its skin, but also the idea that the ruling class has some sort of divine right of kingship because they are descended from the gods or they're crossbred. The grafted bloodline is a big thing that Sabak discusses symbolically throughout the etymology of all the world's mythos. I mean, I'm just barely even dipping our toes into what is being portrayed here with the can. You can't, what do you do with your crops? You can them, the canopic jars. The canopy is another word for the firmament, the container of all the things. The Ouroboros is the symbol of the whole wheel of the pleroma, and the serpent or the dragon, which is the sun, going around in its circuit. And it begs the question that Seven Bomar posed in one of his uploads the other day on the Understanding YouTube channel of like, are we inside of is the being that we're in a giant serpent? Because symbolically and in the language, if we can maybe assess that there's something in the language that is a code that we're able to crack to decipher more about like the reality that we're in, intentionally put there or not, there does seem to be a valid question there of like, is the body that we're cells within a type of some kind of serpent creature? And I fully accept that as having some plausibility, because look at vertebrate animals like dogs and snakes, and look at human beings. And I actually have come to accept that maybe on the etheric level, or like plasma entities, stuff that you might encounter in the astral that doesn't really have a body, that this shape of a spine and of a column of chakras, the way that a serpent is shaped, may be like the primary base configuration of how life forms, and then things around it in the toroidal field around it, the torus, the body, might take different shapes, but this primary pole thing is the symbolic of all created beings. Anyway, there's a lot of rambling, but there's just so much here. My mind is blown, and I don't know if I really captured it because I'm still trying to wrap my head around all this. But the fact that they just showed a snake skin grafted onto a human arm is just out fucking outrageous, completely insane.
I love that. Out fucking outrageous. Let's stick that on
It's
on
nutrageous,
promotion
actually.
for that.
So I think of the canes and the cons as like signifying all things crafty, you know, all because cane is two ball cane. I think a lot of it hails to metallurgy in general, and which is the preserving the wisdom of Kemet. You know, the alchemy of Kemet is preserved in the all of the metallurgists and alchemists throughout the ages. So definitely think of that in the fact that there is a whole lot here, but the fact that canines are intrinsic to a conquering culture because the canines do the task of cleaning up the dead and keeping the dead where they belong. So that is why Anubis is the god of the dead, because the dogs are notorious for digging up bones out of the graveyard and come resurrecting the dead and come walking up to your porch all happy with a bone in their mouth. And you're like, that's grandma. What are you doing? So the fact that canines are associated with death and that craftiness is the signature of these conquering cultures over time. It's very profound, and they clearly loved their cannabis for good reason.
Yeah, they're Anubis. Yeah, man.
I got one more on that with that scene with the lizard skin on the hand there.
I just can't believe they showed us this. Like, just a little quick flash. Hey, they don't really say anything about it, but this is so important.
It's super revealing, and it even hails back to Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh, he goes down into the water and gets that sacred herb that's going to give the power of rejuvenation, and then it is a serpent that steals it while he's taking a bath. The serpent steals his sacred herb, which was maybe cannabis, theoretically.
Well, they did they're finding that the mummies had cannabis and cocaine, which the old world supposedly did not have. Wow. Supposedly in the original cosmology of bullshit that they sold us. But they are finding that in like quite literally, there's a big fight in all the archaeological study groups because they literally found cocaine in a mummy.
And there's the cane again. There's that craftiness.
Yep. And cannabis, which they didn't think they were supposed to have, that was only supposed to be in South America, right? Nah, bullshit.
Bullshit.
So I was trying to figure out like which Indian deities, because I was blanking on it. There's just so much to remember, but it's freaking Vishnu. Vishnu is the one that is very commonly portrayed with the cobra hood. Just got to put it out there. Vishnu is Vishnu. Okay. Vishnu. The VF switch between languages is demonstrable. This is the Lord of the age of Pisces. This is the origin point of your Horus or your Jesus. It's Vishnu. Yes. Vishnu. He's also part of a trinity. Nice. Shiva, Shakti, Vishnu.
I dig that so much. And there it is. There's the shift. I did this weave the other day. Shift is fish, tea.
And look, here's the jar.
It's the two fish of Pisces. Nice.
There's a jar that's just like the jar that we saw in the Masonic tracing board.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. In that trinity, that triune aspect is, those are there's three stations that are water. There's 3 stations that are earth. There's 3 stations that are fire, and 3 stations that are air. And that's the triune deity that pops up all over the place because it has dominion in all of the elements.
Okay, so moving forward, then the zombie Hecate priest comes out and he's dragging a body and he throws the body on the altar.
Oh, Chance, can you pop that one graphic up before we step away from the snakeskin corpse?
You betcha.
Because when they're down on the ground, he's like, I see chunks of meaty bits going that way. And it just makes me think maybe we should go. And he doesn't just want to go the opposite way. He wants to literally crawl up to the roof. He looks to the roof for how am I going to get away from the chunky meaty bits and the fleshy death? And so he sees the canoptic jars with his flashlight when he backs up and gets just the right angle. And when he crawls up there to that lofty, elevated spot where all of the ingredients are, it is quite amazing that the cups, the canoptic jars, are like the dippers. They're like the 2 dippers. There's a big dipper and a little dipper. And there's even the snake skin. Well, that's Draco that drapes around the pole star. So all the ingredients of this central location that was hinted at with the amazing riddle that we were just going over before, all those ingredients are consummated. They are brought to life up there in the rafters. When he's looking and listing off what he sees, he is seeing up in the rafters cups, vessels, and snakeskin. And that is, to me, indicating this pole star location. And sure enough, that is the exit. That's how he gets out. He ends up walking out this, eventually he walks out this door. So I just thought that was really profound that they had all the bits and pieces of the pole star and the polar constellations.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you brought that forward. And this is fascinating graphic here showing the path, the ecliptic path of the pole, North Pole. That's too much to get into, but it's very important to know what the pole star was when we're talking about these previous ages. Now we've got the body that the zombie Hecate priest throws onto the altar is Kennedy, the character named Kennedy, who was the police officer. And wouldn't you know, Kennedy's got an ugly head wound. I hope you noticed that, Gabriel.
Wow.
This is so amazing. They're just...
So this is the autopsy of President JFK right here.
Right? Nothing is benign. Nothing is benign in this cinematic experience.
No, not at all. So Kennedy means ugly head wound in Gaelic, in case anybody didn't catch that. Sorry to Robert Shelby Downer, you guys. It's not a good day for Kennedy. He gets eviscerated and his organs pulled out by the zombie priest. And I just really want to point out this symbolism here. How the word that Michael Tessarion would use is necrophilus. And that is exactly the perfect way to describe the perversion of the ancient mysteries into, the fallen, degraded form that whatever this brotherhood of the snake became, this grafted bloodline, these wannabe rulers and controllers, they became necrophilus, which means death-loving, death-worshipping, rather than life-affirming and life-serving, which is what the whole point of the mysteries was originally, was to create a brotherhood of those who would serve God in all man, that they would see the divine in every being and actually act on it. But, instead we get these Walking Dead, corpse shambling, Cain and Abel cannibal priests here. And
totally
bad news.
And now that I'm so glad you brought the Kennedy thing to the fore here, because Kennedy was assassinated at the initiation point, at the first degree of Ophiuchus. November 22nd is the beginning of the 5 days, approximately, of Ophiuchus, where his heel is resting on the tail of the scorpion. And sure enough, this dark priest is about to embody the serpent charmer in a major way, because he starts pulling entrails out of this body. And by pulling out the entrails, he is doing a ritualistic depiction of Ophiuchus, who is holding a snake, the head of the snake and the tail of the snake. And so there is a powerful Ophiuchus ritual woven into the plot here. And
the other thing I'll say is the Hollywoodization of, although it's Georgia now, is Hollywood.
Yep.
That's a whole other conversation. The Hollywoodization, though, of ancient Egypt is to turn all of this into zombie, mummy, scary horror movie, blood and guts bullshit, and totally lose the light and spirit of the real tradition that preceded before the fall and the slip into fetishism of the new kingdom.
Yeah, man. Good point. Good point. And one other random thing about the Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus holding the serpent, both ends of the serpent between his legs, is also encoded or revealed in the in Judas's death scene, when Judas Iscariot, who is Scorpio, when he dies, he tries to hang himself, stumbles down into a graveyard, and his entrails spill out between his legs. And that death scene is absolutely embodying Ophiuchus in all the aspects.
This is where it also starts to hit the beats of Indiana Jones too. Right after this, there would have been like kind of there's a scene in Indiana Jones, I think, where they're hiding around the ark itself, and then they have to like in this they have to get he gets a different perspective. He looks up or something, and he goes exploring. They're trying to escape the zombie priest who is clicking, which is weird because people are saying that it's supposed to be clicking because the priest doesn't have his tongue anymore, but the sounds that they're making is like that you can only do with your tongue. So this is weird. This is some of that weird dream shit that I think they're putting in on purpose to kind of like throw some dissonance in it, like where we know it's wrong, but not know what it is that is wrong. And this happens a lot throughout this episode, especially when we get to the mental asylum.
Nice.
But we'll go back to that. But this is where Indiana Jones thing starts getting heavy.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the clicking, because to me that almost seems like echolocation.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
Yep. If he lives in the dark and there's no lighting, no torches, no way to see, then echolocation would be highly efficient. And even if you don't have a tongue, you can probably do some other weird guttural sound. It's creepy. It's totally creepy.
Okay, so she gets chased around by this thing, and she runs off into another chamber, and there's a huge bottomless pit. Okay, this is where they are just absolutely loud and clear going to tell you, hey, this is the sun going into the underworld cycle. As she throws her flare, phallus, or torch, the light into the bottomless pit, it falls in. If you remember the apocalypse in the book of Revelation, and they had over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Apollyon is obviously the sun. They give you that word, like people throw that around, especially sort of dogmatic Christian revelation rapturists, and then be like, Apollyon is a demon. Apollyon literally is Apollo plus the word on, which is a word for the sun, Apollyon. So going into the pit, that's just the angel of the bottomless pit is the sun. It's the sun in winter as it goes into the underworld cycle. It's the sun at nighttime when it's hidden and goes under the earth. And so this is where they're at right now. They're going into this underworld cycle. There goes the light. It falls into the dark bottomless pit, never to be seen again.
Yep. I got to point out, you put an in front of Apollyon and you get Napoleon.
There you go.
And I know those bankers, they get a hard on, depicting Napoleon as the Antichrist back in the days. So there's probably a there too.
There is, I'm sure. I mean, even the idea of the Antichrist would be like anti the sun. The black sun. Christ comes from Krishna, which is black. I will say it again and again. We're talking about the black sun, the black sheep. Right. So yeah, there's that. So you sent me another graphic. Do you want me to pull that up?
Yeah, because this is where another confirmation of that Hecate, she who has two torches, in not only, so she throws one torch into the pit to test its depth, which seems so wasteful. I'm always like, you just wasted a perfectly good torch.
It's too far to jump down, so just like, why do you need to?
Yeah. So she throws one.
This coin you have here is ridiculous.
Yes.
Is that a coin? What is that?
Yes, that is a coin with many of the symbols of Hecate. It's actually two coins. I got a little one up in the corner there also. But I just thought that was really valuable to see so many aspects of Hecate expressed all in one place. We can see that she has that Medusa component. She has the triune, even the maze, the fact that there's that little labyrinth there woven in. She's got the double-headed axe. She's got a Neptunian spear with, 3 prongs to her spear. She's got the vase or the vessel. She's got all those phases of the moon. I just thought that was a really gratifying Hecate image. But so she throws. Oh, whoa!
We talking about Hecate or are we talking about Kali?
Nice.
I can't seem to tell the difference.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is so similar, isn't it?
I just want people to really be sure that this is all coming from India.
Yes. And are those poppies?
Okay, so the other parts of this graphic, I have the screenshots of, if we want to go through that sort of beat by beat.
Just the one last point this is where she becomes the far strider. She has to do these long lunges to get across these gaps as she's kind of doing the wall crawl here. And that is the far darter, or the far strider is another name for Hecate. So it's just really interesting how many ways she's fulfilling the many names of this same entity.
That's great, dude. I didn't know that.
Nice.
And you guys see the Mickey Mouse ears, the castration scar on that key. That's the M key ultra castration scar on the key right there. So
Hecate is also shown with three faces also.
Right. It's amazing how it is absolutely everywhere. It's so everywhere. It's almost concerning. Almost.
Here's Ma Durga. Got a trident.
Wow,
look
at that, man. The similarities.
Yeah. it's for a reason.
Impossible to ignore.
I think so. It exists in Buddhism too. Not just, there's bodhisattvas with many arms shown. Mm-hmm. There's multi-armed Buddhas. This is, it goes on and on, but we would digress to get too far into it. It's just,
Chance, look at, I mean, I'm being really nerdy here, but like that labyrinth, the maze in the coin that I have, it even matches the shape of the tiger's nose that you brought up.
oh, that's interesting. I already just closed it.
Okay, that's all good.
But, I would like to actually wait. I might be able to find it again.
And I think that is I think what that is it's a uterus. I think ultimately we're seeing a uterus, and we might be dealing with like the three phases of the female anatomical experience that is out of my jurisdiction. but we might be looking at the uterus before it is in its fertile stage, when it is in its fertile stage, and when it is purging, when it is time to cut away the uterine wall for the menstruation cycle. Just a thought that might be what those are encoding there. And it would smell. It would have a smell aspect. The fact that the tiger's nose is shaped like a uterine wall is indicating that if you're sensitive enough, if you're tuned in the old ways, you could maybe even tell if a woman was fertile or not from a distance.
Well, guess what happens next? She gets pulled into the wall.
She gets pulled into the wall, and then the bloodbath ensues. Bingo, man. Bingo. Nice.
Yeah, she gets pulled into the wall through this crack, and she pulls off this guy's right arm, and there he is about to stab her with the bony remains of his right arm. So he's now left-handed. This is a priest of the left-hand path.
If you're a zombie, I mean, that's a baller move. You lose your arm and you stab him with your arm like that.
Bone shank.
Hardcore, man.
Call me Bone Shank.
Bone Shank nose.
Yeah, she's about to get boned.
This reminds me a little bit of Jay Obey the Jinn and the Roe versus Wade issue that just popped up, but I'll just float that out there. She pulls the mask off.
She hits them right in the eye of Horus. Nice. Actually, no, she hits the moon eye. That's his left eye that gets hit.
Nice.
So it's the moon eye. Right? She hits him right on the money, right in the moon eye. Shrieking.
And then they roll, and there's the rolling of the dung again. She does a tactical roll and throws him off the cliff and saves herself to rise again.
Yep. So there's another. The light of this flare falls into the pit. The Apollyon. Okay. So then we get cut into the scene of Stephen discovering the actual tomb chamber, the burial chamber of whoever's tomb this is. And then they just flash this golden horse and say Tutmosis II. I didn't really have time to look further into this, but I'm wondering why they're showing a horse and he's saying Tutmosis II. Did you have any thoughts on that, Gabriel?
Nothing really. I believe Alexander had a horse that his father bestowed onto him. And there's a famous line where his father says, if you can control your people the way that you control this horse, then you will truly be a great general. And it's like his most well-known defining moment where his father is actually boosting his own ego. And I think that horse's name is famous. It's intrinsic to his mythology, Alexander the Great. So that's probably what that horse is, but I don't know the name, and I'm kind of gray on that ingredient. But yeah, it is important.
We should, I guess we could just skip to that part where we find out that this is Alexander the Great's tomb.
Oops.
We will. Yeah, we're almost to that. Just wanted to point out the whole terracotta soldiers thing that was going on in here. Again, showing the east to west transmission of these traditions.
Nice.
Right.
Yes.
We've talked about the terracotta warriors thing in the past, but moving forward, there's also a big Tahuti Thoth ibis right here that I thought was an interesting symbol popping up. And then he's like, wait, it's Macedonian. Okay. Revealing that it's Alexander the Great. I'm going to blow through a little bit of this. We could spend way more time talking about elements of this, like what's Macedonia? Alexander the Great. Who is that? I mean,
Yeah.
Alexander the Great was said to be a descendant of Hercules,
Right.
which would mean that he's a son of the sun, because Hercules is the sun. I've actually got
And
I want to look up some coins with depicting Alexander the Great just to kind of prove this point. So I'm going to do that, but go ahead.
Alexander the Great was not an Egyptian. He was an interloper. He was the king. He was a pharaoh out of essentially acquiring the rest of the world, and made himself pharaoh. But he's not an Egyptian. He's Greek.
Nice. Yes. And that is also one of the titles for Anubis. Anubis is known as a supplanter, an interloper is a great description of Anubis as well. And this face mask has a lot of Scorpio to it. As it rotates, I see the eyes looking very much like the Zubanel's Shanubi and Zubanel's Shadobi, the two claws of the Scorpio. And his beard is like the tail of the Scorpio in just a very interesting way to me.
So I couldn't find it very easily on the Google image search, but I'll just show what we have from, maybe I can zoom it in a little better. Yeah, here we go. This is again coming from the Spirit World book, July's End, that I love to reference. But these are some tetradrams said to come from like 350 BC of Alexander the Great. Do you see the horns?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is he's basically being portrayed as Zeus Amon. He's
right.
Like, I personally do not accept a historical Alexander. Why else would they never find a tomb? They're making a big deal like, oh, we found the tomb of Alexander. Like, that's such a big deal. I think he's a son of the sun. I think it's some sort of organizing mythos for why there's a ruling class. It's like, oh,
right.
well, we had this great, patriarch who conquered everything, and that's why we're in charge still today, because of this great Alexander.
Right.
There's another one of these tetragrams. Let me find it. Too far zoomed in.
I have heard that on coins, when they have those horns,
some of the coins, he's got a lion skin over his head, like a lion head over his head as a hood.
Oh wow!
Because
educated.
Hercules with the Cleonian lion skin.
Yeah.
It's if there was a historical Alexander, then he's been, they've done a whole, what do they call that? I forgot the word, whatever they apply.
Euhemism.
Yeah, euhemism.
Yes.
Where they apply mythology, astrotheology to a historical figure and call it history. Yeah. We'll never know at this point, because they've mixed up all of the history with astrotheology. We can't really sort it out anymore.
Yeah. So I have heard that with these coins, they are often, when they depict them with horns, like subtly depicted with horns. Sometimes it's even veiled, like they'll have a headdress and it'll just be a little bit of the horn coming out from the side that you can barely notice, that it's insinuating that they are initiated in the like Eleusinian mysteries or certain cults, entheogenic cults. But I like to maybe put forward that it has a lot to do with the placenta and what we talk about with those who are initiated. I think that is something really worthwhile to consider, that they might be fully invested in the ancestral book of records, or the Akashic information has been passed down to them. And that is why we have Cleopatra the first, second, third, fourth. They keep the same name and they just put another number on the end, And I've also heard that people like Cleopatra and the Queen of Sheba, that they weren't actual historical people, that they were just empires that had dominion over vast locations and territories that have been preserved and kept alive through, like you were saying, through mythology, to keep these empires in power.
Yeah, and then constantly mixing up that mythology with history. One of the examples would be King Arthur, who was pure astrotheology. He's got 12 Knights of the Round Table and all that. But the Smithsonian, with their Black Sun logo, I saw recently that they're claiming to have found the first archaeological evidence of King Arthur. And I didn't look further into it. I just saw the headline and I was like, this is why we can't have nice things. The same cult constantly lying to us and mixing up our history with their freaking sun cult. But what do you guys think about taking a quick intermission?
I'm down.
We're probably about halfway through the actual plot of the episode. I don't know if that means we're halfway through our talk, but I would like to take a quick break. I'll bring the music up. We'll take about 3 minutes and we'll come back.
Right on. Good call.
Good.
All right. Okay. Much better. I needed a bit of a stretch and turn off some of the lights in here because it's just so freaking hot.
Nice.
All right, so let's press on. So much to do. So yeah, we have the black pharaoh here. He's Osiris in the sarcophagus. That is why they symbolize it this way on the sarcophagi. And then we skip over to Harrow, the tertium quid in red here. he's what's going on in this conversation? So Layla runs into Harrow, and Harrow, from across the chasm, across the gap, he uncovers her father wound by telling her that her father called her little scarab, and revealing that he had seen with the scales what had happened to her father. He says, the scales achieved their judgment by revealing to me moments of sin and pain. So he reveals how Layla's dad died. He mentions also, oh, I got this out of order. My bad. This was important.
Yeah.
We'll just skip forward past that part. It's not that important. We said what we needed to say. We're bringing up that trauma as his modus operandi. Maybe we want to say more about that, Gabriel.
Yeah, one thought here that is, I guess the kids are calling it meta nowadays, but he has this. He says that Alexander was the voice of Amet. And so he's riddling out where is he going to find this Ushabti, and he decides that it must be in the thalamus, or is that the third chakra is your voice box.
It depends on how you're counting. It's really actually the fifth.
Okay.
If you're going from root up to there.
Okay.
In a septenary way.
Nice.
But it's also the G. It's interesting. It's G in terms of a note, and that's the 7, and that's the 7th note.
Nice.
So going back to this opening of the mouth ritual we're about to see, the adds tool, which was the tool for that ritual, is shaped like a 7. The mouth or the throat is the G note. You generate with your voice, the logos, that generative principle.
Yep. And another name for Anubis was he who is at the place of embalming. And so all of this embalming that we've been seeing, we actually saw them like hold they flashed the adds tool right up to the screen earlier in that earlier scene. So there is a whole lot of this adds tool, pulling of the tongue, removing the voice is a real key ingredient to all of this. But I find it really interesting that while Stephen is reaching into the throat of this mummified Alexander, while he is apprehending the voice of Amet, Harrow is using his voice to command
Layla.
What's her name here? His
Layla.
His lovely lady.
His lovely Layla?
Layla, that's it. So the Harrow is using his voice to control Layla, while Steve is grabbing the voice box of Alexander. So
they're flashing back and forth between the two scenes.
Yeah, it's strangely meta. And just as Harrow finishes speaking to Layla, they flash back to Mark popping that Ushabti out of the voice box. It's just interesting how the correspondent the two scenes actually are.
And do you remember your Hecate holding the axe?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alexander.
Alexander has an axe in the sarcophagus with him. Also, here is a winged scarab holding up the sun. This is Cancer holding up the sun at the top of its height of power.
Nice. In Alexander,
we didn't even talk about with Cancer.
I know. There's so much.
Because it's like double serpent right there. Can and Sir.
I'm gonna get my written notes because there were some really interesting things like the axe is Alexander cut the Gordian's knot, and that was prophesized, the chosen one will come and solve this knot, and he like just chops the thing in half with his sword, actually. But I love that you connected that with the Gorgon. You know, I think there is really something there, because the Gorgon is a bunch of knots, and the snake hair is much like the Gordian's knot. So I think there is a strong parallel, and we've already seen that Hecate is depicted as the Medusa snake hair. Also,
Yeah, and that connection came about in a tuning I was doing for a guy. If you remember, I was tuning in this heart chakra region, in the area that corresponds to like feeling like you're assaulted or attacked by other people's bad vibes and negative energy. And he's like, Chance, I just saw something really weird. And I was like, okay, go ahead, tell me what it was. And he had seen a vision of a Medusa type vision. It was a big tangled ball of snakes, but on each snake was the head with a face of somebody that he felt had wronged him in his life.
That is awesome. And you were doing the forks, the tuning forks on him, right?
Yeah, I cut through it. I cut through that knot, that tangle with
tone. That is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, I'll never forget that.
The Gorgonian knot.
Right. That is so priceless, man. That is so badass.
I think I forgot to have this up while I was talking about the axe and Alexander and the Scarab that he's got here, but this is definitely a very Indiana Jones moment. Here's the opening of the mouth ritual. Sorry, Mr. Great. And he pulls out the thing. But here's another point. Like, just to be clear that we're talking about throats and mouths, Harrow holds his neck and he says about Layla's father that he was a man with a fuchsia scarf. And the scarf had embroidered scarabs on it that he thought maybe his daughter made for him, which would be Layla. And that just goes back to the whole suicide by scarf thing.
Yep.
Fuchsia might as well be red.
Yep.
But fuchsia, I don't know, it makes me think of fasces, which is an axe.
Oh, shit. Wow, there is so much going on here. Nice. Sweet.
Fuchsia, fascia is connective tissue.
Right.
Yep. So one thing I'm thinking about is as well as the red scarf hangings that MO, the high-end assassin who is gone for quite a few years, taking out very high-profile targets using the red scarf technique, which I'm sure most people here are aware of. The reference to the fuchsia scarf definitely hails back to that, but I want to also suggest the possibility that this is a indicator of the 5G and how the bands of T-Mobile's 5G color is their new symbol of the 5G takeover that's going on.
It's like electric fuchsia.
It's electric fuchsia. And
I've never thought about this before, but if the throat chakra is the G note, but it's also the fifth chakra, and you use 5G to project your voice to other people across vast distances, it's very weird.
And here it comes to voice to skull technology, and the possibility that the 5G makes the V2K all that more possible. Something to really think about, that might be what they're hailing to, that we don't need to send the assassin out with the scarf technique anymore, and now we have this new technique.
Okay. Now that okay, this is perfect that this has already come up, because this is showing so if anybody doesn't know what the red scarf and the suicided kind of idea, keep that in mind as we go forward towards the end of this episode. There's a lot of suicided kind of signaling, not that we haven't already seen Kennedy with his head wound and all that stuff, but it keeps going.
Yeah.
In fact, the probably the first exact. So I stumbled on the first, what I think is the biggest American suicided that wasn't a big politician, but we'll keep going until I get there.
Can you pull up the T-Mobile logo? Because this is I didn't see it going here, but let's do it. Let's do it while we're here. One of my early videos, from a long time ago, was I spent
Just to go on. Let me just finish
Yeah.
the red scarf thing. A few people that were killed by suicide by hanging with a red scarf. The fashion designer Kate Spade hung by a doorknob by a red scarf. And then Anthony Bourdain as well. But, well, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Anthony Bourdain didn't do that.
No, I think
this
you're
is too
right.
much research
right.
to do right now.
I think I remember Bourdain was one of them. Now there wasn't necessarily a red scarf, but
I think Bourdain's was the belt from a bathrobe, but it was red.
Okay.
But then I don't know. You get all these different stories. Like I don't know what's real. But this is just a thing.
Robin Williams was supposedly one of them, and what's the guy
Carradine.
from Lincoln Car? David Carradine, definitely.
David Carradine.
Wasn't Heath Ledger one of them that was rumored to have that?
No, he died from OD.
Well, he definitely OD'd. Doesn't mean he didn't die with a red scarf around his neck.
Yeah, I guess it may be true.
That's a good point. Man, yeah, it was all right. So I spent all day in T-Mobile, and when I was getting my new phone a while back, and then I made a video on it on my channel, and I tried to hand draw this T-Mobile on my little dry erase board, and I did some kind of fun things with it. But one thing I absolutely see is the shadow image of two cats. Do you see? There are two halves of a cat. And just like I did with the Liberty Bell on the $100 bill, you cut it in half, you juxtapose left to right, and you get a full cat's face when you put them together. But it's two cats guarding the gates. And just to make things really fun and interesting, this is very similar to the Georgia Guidestones. It's very interesting how it has just some aspects.
I think it looks like scales.
Oh, right. Two scales.
Does look like scales.
Very nice. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So then I also took the two faces and I put them at a kilter. And when you put them at a kilter, it kind of can make a fox's face. So it was like all kinds of animals. Like it was like a take your pick. We had foxes, owls, cats. But I just thought I would share that too. That there's definitely more than meets the eye in the T-Mobile logo. And there's that fuchsia, that we're talking about. So I just thought we'd throw all that on the table.
Okay, so this is really interesting. As Stephen is pulling the Ushabti from the mouth, Harrow is yelling, "Wake up!" assuming to his followers, who then come rushing to his aid. And this is the moment of truth. This is like, they found what they've been searching for. This hidden thing has been revealed, a transformative moment, which is the other aspect of Scorpio, not just like death or betrayal or sexuality or lust or things like that. It's also getting to the bottom of truth and the transformative power of finally finding the hidden truth of things. And there's exactly what you're talking about, the way he's holding the Ushabti, like with his hand, one hand flat and the other like the pillar. That's a really interesting point, as they do repeatedly show that exact same posture. And they put it in, with the light behind it to represent sort of that eureka moment. Then Layla catches up to Stephen and she's super pissed, and she immediately pulls Mark out of Stephen, and Mark takes the body. and she's interrogating him about her father trauma, and he admits that he was there. So he's now the betrayer in a sense, because he was keeping the secret. Scorpio is secrets, and the secret has been revealed. So, like I said, the moment of truth. She says, the reason we met is you just had a guilty conscience.
Nice.
Because I presume that he went to find her to like check up on her after her father was killed by the mercenary that he worked with. And he says that he was shot and left for dead. So following Scorpio, what comes next in the sky clock, guys?
Sag.
The hunter? The mighty
Nice.
one? So
nice. The arrow, the hero with the arrow.
Yep.
With
Mark,
the double tap.
Mark does a couple of sweet kills with the Al-Ax-Ander axe, but then he gets shot 3 times.
I thought it was twice.
I thought he had 3 shots. Well, is it at least 2? For sure, at least 2.
Yeah.
And here we go, falling into the water. Remember that whole thing I said about Cancer and being saved by the water or saved from the water? Well, Mark's going to need to be saved from the water later. But here's this moment where he's falling into the waters of Pisces, kind of like we're skipping ahead to that because he needs to come to a rebirth moment after this. But he's falling to face himself, which could be kind of a Capricorn thing as well. That Capricorn is about taking responsibility for your own emotions, for your own, inner demons, dark side, that type of thing. Just taking responsibility.
Yes.
And he falls in. He falls in a crucifixion pose.
Nice. Yes. And Harrow's last words to him are, "I can't save anyone who won't save themselves."
Yeah, it's super Capricorn.
As he's putting the nail in the coffin there. And that he ends up saying that same line a little later in the film. He echoes the same line. But I just got to point out, guys, that is, to me, because I'm so placentarific all the time, that is an indicator, a whisper, an echo of the placenta. Saving yourself, that preserving yourself is the ritual that I'm always rambling on about with instilling the placenta into the child. And this is really weird, but the tribe of Dan, of all of the Jewish tribes of Israel, the tribe of Dan was at the back end, the tail end. They were the last of all the tribes, and they were responsible for picking up anything that was lost. They were you could think of it as like covering their tracks was their principal job. They're the back end of the pack, and anything that anybody loses, it is the tribe of Dan's responsibility to find it and return it back to its source. And there's even, if you do some investigation on like the word Tav and how it relates to the tribe of Dan, TOD, there are some interesting maxims for the tribe of Dan. And one of those maxims is that you are, it says something along the lines of you are no longer human if you don't even have the presence to keep even what mother has given you. And that is really telling to me that it seems to be calling to that placenta. Don't lose the placenta. I can't take care of people who won't take care of themselves, who won't clean up after themselves. So all of it has a very subtle placenta implication. So I just have to say that because he does repeat it later. And they say, in order to get into the kingdom of heaven, you got to go out the way you came in, like a baby, meaning that the placenta may be integral.
And so the Jungian metaphor here is like you're talking about the taking responsibility also is his shadow work, basically, that nobody ever heard about until Jung, at least in the Western world. Now, all the mystery schools had this, which is essentially what the Freemason death ritual thing that they've learned over time is essentially from Egyptians, and they say it all the time, that we are all the fucking secret societies think they're descended from Templars, and they got that from the Egyptians. But the symbolic death ritual, especially with the water, I mean, that's completely John the Baptist. So he in that scene. So I think he's shot twice, and while this is happening, I am looking at while I'm watching that today. I've been looking at the youngest owl that I have right now. I've named Meriwether, and I kind of thought they were female at first, all three of them, but the two oldest ones were female, and the littlest one, who I named Meriwether, turns out he's a male. So who else is a male in with the name Meriwether? Is Meriwether Lewis, right?
Yeah, buddy.
So check out who was shot twice and ruled a suicide. Meriwether Lewis. He was shot once in the head and once in the chest, and everybody said, and this is the conjecture, that he was Jefferson said he was melancholia or whatever. He was prone to depression, whatever. So, and he was only 35 supposedly when he killed himself twice in 1809 without a repeating arm. How do you shoot yourself in the stomach or chest, in the body cavity? You shoot yourself in the torso with a front-loading pistol twice? No, that doesn't. Come on, even with an ugly a black powder, you're not going to miss. You can't, and you're not going to load that thing again with a lead ball in your gut. It's not possible. Anyway, I think that's one of the first suicided. Probably not the first. Of course, it's not. There was 100 years of 70, 76. There, the country was still pretty young. It might have been the first one, but
that's an important one.
Could have been the start of the red bandana club.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's in Houdini's day. There was Houdini died under very suspicious circumstances too.
True.
There's a lot of cloak and dagger shit going around back at that turn of the century.
Yeah.
Meriwether, that's a great name.
Yeah, isn't that great?
That's a great name.
He plucked out a feather for me yesterday. I was like, oh, I'm so stoked. Yeah.
That's sweet.
All of that is amazing. I got on a little bit of a research train, but I needed to bring some additional imagery for it in a moment. But what happens here is as he's sinking into the water, we get a repeat of the camera work that the beginning of the episode showcased of the camera being upside down and then flipping over, but now it was upside right and then goes upside down. So as he's sinking into the water,
Nice.
the camera changes to make it appear as if he's rising up. So he's being saved from the water. He's going up to the pole star.
Yeah.
Actually, this Vesica Pisces opens up. He goes into the light. He's sinking, but he's actually going up. Back to that whole like world of inversion thing idea.
Right. And this made me think. I wrote down in my notes, fiat lux. It's
Let there be light.
which I actually translate that in with a little twist. I see it maybe being false light, manufactured light, because the Bible is, a story, but also from here he goes into a movie, cuts to a movie scene, so it kind of has a fiat lux false light value.
Yeah, it cuts to a movie. They even change the aspect ratio to make it square, like an old VHS tape would be. I thought that was interesting.
Good
Because if
catch.
you look at the other screenshots, it's full widescreen. There's black bars at the top. But now he's in the cube. Gone into a square. And so that is the same actor, right? That's the guy that plays Mark and Steven, just with longer hair. Or is it's not the same actor, is it? I guess not. It doesn't look just like him.
They used his brother in some of these scenes. So especially when he's playing against himself. So it's possible that it is his brother. He has longer hair, I think.
Okay.
Chance, that picture that you were just showing of him floating in the water, would you go to our Telegram group and see that picture that I dropped in there? And compare that to the one of him floating in the water?
Before he winds up in a cube.
Wow.
Or at least the cube aspect ratio.
Nice catch.
Yeah, this is Salvador Dali, right?
Uh-huh.
Salvador, words, a word pertaining to serpent and salvation.
Nice. The same colors too. Exactly the same colors.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, Gordy.
Very purposeful.
Yeah, the crucifixion. So back to here. Yeah, very much the same colors. Even got that right angle thing going on here. Like the cube. Very good. And he was in a crucifixion pose when he fell. So I believe that is a solid weave. One thing I wanted to point out is when they switched to this seemingly random scene of Dr. Stephen Grant, the Indiana Jones adventurer, he says, the statue of Coyolaxuatl or something. I'm probably pronounced that wrong. Lunar god of the Aztecs. So we're seeing how this multi-headed god thing is, they're letting you know, oh yeah, that's also in South America. And this is the point that I wanted to bring up. Brahma, Lord Brahma, depicted often with 4 or 5 heads. And something I found the other day, the Temple of Dendara with these Hathor pillars where there's 4-headed Hathor. And this was the only image I grabbed, but there's a lot of these. And the other wild thing about this Temple Dendara, which is where the Dendera zodiac is, that's in the Louvre, that we haven't even really touched on, but is wildly important to all of this Egyptology sky clock thing. Here's another good picture of some Hathor pillars. This was a better one, maybe. But it's multi-headed. And anyway, this Temple Dendera, the name that the Egyptians called it was Tantara. Just basically one letter different than Tantra.
Yes.
Hathor was a god of sexual healing. Okay. So we're talking about Tantra. Again, like if we could do this all day to demonstrate that Kemet is Ethiopia. That both the words mean the same thing. Egypt is India. And that applies to the North and South Americas as well. There's a reason why when the conquistadors showed up, they wouldn't allow anybody that was learned in letters or writing, like priests or scribes of any kind, to visit the New World until they had finished wiping out the cultures, because they knew that would, their whole fucking empire and the narrative it was built on would fall apart if people who knew what they're looking at came over to the so-called New World and saw, oh, these people have our exact same symbolism and religion. It just wouldn't work. I'm excited for Dylan's next work where he goes into that in more detail. I feel like I'm leaving something out that I wanted to put in there too. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Yeah, the Dendera calendar is a big part of the final scene. I've got a graphic I'm going to pop up for that. But one thing that comes to mind is, and this is, big up Mario Garza on this, for bringing to light that central component of the Dendera calendar, that the figure standing in the center of the Dendera is holding a knife. And we have woven on this in the past, that this is why there is a cutting, a sacred obstetric practice of cutting aspects off of the babies. Both for the men, it's the circumcision, and it is also the placenta being cut. That is the very intrinsic to initiation, and it is also why the word court, when you go into a courtroom, the word court means cut, and that is another form of initiation. We are still caught in these rituals and traditions. And it's
if somebody's curt with you, if someone's curt with you, they're being short with you, or they're cutting you short.
Yes. It's amazing how it is still culturally fundamental to everything we do to this day, and we don't realize it goes back to those traditions. Nice.
Wow.
Yes.
Look at that.
And there's that cutting implement right there in the center. Yep. I need to write down. I need to get into Mario's head one more time and write down the names of all these tools and implements, because he has them right off the top of his head. But that has a very specific name. And so in this scene where we're doing the Indiana Jones, he's hacking away. He's cutting through the jungle. As we come through the center light, that center point, the next thing we see is him chopping away at stuff.
Yeah, the camera even cuts from that portal that Stephen Mark is going through to this flashlight, to the torch.
Right. Yep.
Which is like, the light in the darkness thing that we saw with the torch going into the pit.
Yep. Now, one other thing, and not to derail or go too far on this, but back when we were doing the H.P. Lovecraft, I kind of continued that project on my own after we put it out and broadcasted it. But I have found a very interesting alignment running from Rhode Island, Providence, which is at 41 degrees northwest and 41 degrees north and 71 degrees west. There's a perfect alignment going down to Jekyll Island, which is at, let me get this right, 41 degrees west and 71 degrees west. I forget. It's hard for me to bring all this to bear, but there's an alignment perfectly. It's a perfect line on the grid. And if you follow that progression logically to the next third point, just using your X and Y axis, it lands on a very well-known crater just off the Yucatan Peninsula. And the name of the meteor that landed in that crater is almost identical to the name of that god that I can't even
Koyo
Koyo.
Kalahuli. I had to look up to see if it was a real thing, because I mean it's clearly a fake movie made for this thing,
Right.
Which they are. So the next scene that after, clearly it's a reference to Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider. It's called Tomb Buster.
Right.
And and he's clearly a Indiana Jones character with a sidekick, like Short Round kind of thing, where it's a minority kid, as a sidekick, and it's cheesy like those 90s Hercules or Xena garbage kind of things. And it's shown to be on VHS, which is interesting too, because I mean that's got to date the thing to at least the 90s, right?
Gosh, I got some really weird shit for you guys.
That's what we're here for, man.
Okay,
Weird shit.
Can we go forward?
Yeah, fire away.
All right.
Please.
All right. So we go from the pit of blackness into this sterile clinical white asylum here.
That's Crowley, by the way.
That's
Yeah,
Crowley.
That's the
Yes.
Crowley that was gold in the earlier episodes.
And he's calling out bingo letters. And the first thing I want to point out is that if I've played some bingo in my life, all right, B22 is not on a bingo board. Okay, on bingo boards, the B's go from 1 to 15. The I's go from 16 to 30 or whatever, and it goes on like that. So he calls B22. That's not a possible bingo letter. He calls G15, also impossible. Then he says 16T. There's not even a fucking T in bingo.
He
But
switches it.
16T. 16 is the tower in tarot. I don't know. I'm thinking
I gotcha.
16T, 2 towers. You're already on that?
I'm already on it. Let's see.
Okay, and he calls it 014, also impossible. But I wanted to talk about bingo a little more just for fun.
Uh-huh.
We were talking about the can or the ken, the kinship of the snake, the Cohens. The original name of bingo, according to the internet, looking it up on Encyclopedia Britannica. And, I'm interested in this. It's a game of chance. The original American form was called Keno or Keno or Po-Keno, oddly enough. But there's the, I don't know, man. Keno, I feel like that's a weird little link to the Ken and the can aspect that we were talking about. And then, just for fun, I was like, what does bingo stand for as an acronym? And I know none of these are official, but I found some that you'll really like. Biological Network Gene Ontology.
Whoa.
Wow.
Big International Non-Governmental Organization.
Oh, dude.
What is it? Whoa. Is that not the Brotherhood of the Snake? A big international non-governmental organization? Okay.
Whoa.
Here's another one. This is from the UN. The UN uses bingo to represent business and industry non-governmental organization. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty wild. So what do
Wow.
you got on the bingo?
Oh man, this is nuts. So the series that he rattles off is, and I only stuck to the numbers, the numerical aspect. Because we're dealing with Crowley.
I did this too, but I just couldn't figure out any significance to it.
Yeah, there was some good stuff just on the first layer, but I strictly stayed with the numbers. So we got B22, G15, 16T, where they switch the number and the letter, O14, O73, B7, F10, N39, I2. Those are the series he rattles off.
It sounds like a cipher.
It's so, yeah. And because I found enough at first glance, I have not dug in deep because there's clearly more going on here. But just on the numbers, 22 is V, 15 is O, 16. He switches the number and the letter on number 16, and he puts the letter in the place of the number. So I stuck with the T there because, like you said, it's the tower, 16. And then O is 14, which reduces to an E. And then 73 reduces to a 10, becomes a J. And then B7 is that's funny. I put B. So 22, 15, T, 14 is vote. VOTE.
Oh, interesting. I did the same thing. I like wrote out the letters, and I was gonna like maybe come back to this later and put it in an acronym generator.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anagram generator.
Yeah. I wonder if the Crowley cipher would be up for the job. But then I got 73 becomes a 10, which is J, and then B. So it becomes a vote JB. Vote for Joe Biden, which I thought was that was enough. Where I was like, okay, there's something. But then the last ones are JCIC, which I think is a military anagram. I think that, but when I look it up, when I just put in JCIC, the most interesting thing that I find is the Court of International Justice. It's it's in Latin. It's Cur Internacional de Justicia, which is just interesting that it's like vote for Joe Biden to go on trial at the Court of International Justice.
Weird.
Yeah, which just to kind of expand on it, I do believe that Crowley switching the Libra card and the Strength card, I think that is laying the intention of putting the International Court in New York, in the 9th District in Kings County. I think that's part of why he switched the Leo and the Justice card. Yeah, JCIC is a big thing. It's a big.
Did you know the Georgia Guidestones were supposedly like 666 miles from the UN building? No, that can't be right. I saw somebody post that, and I just thought about it. Geographically, that doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's another UN building. Maybe the nearest one. But yeah, JCIC. If anybody is in, what do you got, Gordy, on that?
So JCIC was a big push between military and international companies. It was under the Joint Strike Force. God damn it! I wish I'll have to look it up, but it was part of a big funding push internationally for military funding that happened to develop the Joint Strike Fighter, which is the F-35 Raptor.
Wow.
It was the big push to give all of the big military industrial complex companies that you can count on one hand, essentially carte blanche to figure out what they needed to do to make this fighter do the things that they wanted. It was a big project, right? And so all these companies kind of came together to do this one fighter. But that whole JCIC was kind of an umbrella funding thing that was just one part of it. And it was a tiny little part of it.
Man, maybe we can put a pin in this, and we'll do some weaving and bring it up in the next one, because it does seem really significant.
Yeah, I'll have to dig a little bit more, but I know it has something to do with that.
Yeah,
but it's nebulous still. Like, I'll have to dig.
And Biden's been in place for 47 years, so he would, no matter what position he was in, he probably had his hand in that cookie jar at the time.
Yeah. Because this would have been about, when did they do the developing on the Joint Strike? 2001. There's a whole documentary about how the military had this push for Lockheed to develop a plane that would do very specific things. It was because we had the Harrier, but we didn't have very stable fighters.
Yeah.
So they wanted the F-35 to be able to hover and land on a carrier, up and down.
I wouldn't it be interesting if the one that went down in Shanksville had a role here? That would be really something. So my theory from the first day of 9/11 still stands. It has never wavered. I think that whatever hit the Pentagon was a military vehicle, a military plane, and they can never let us know that a military plane got jacked and that it nose bombed in Shanksville so hard that there's no evidence remaining of it. And wouldn't it be something if this was pointing at that program that had to be demolished, obliterated, dustificated? Just a thought.
So this says the JCIC defines integrated campaign as joint force and interorganizational partner efforts to enable achievements and maintenance of policy aims by integrating military activities and aligning non-military activities of sufficient scope, scale, simultaneously. What the fuck? Why wouldn't they just say the same or parallel? And duration across multiple domains. So essentially, joint concept for integrated campaigning.
Whoa, I'm writing that down. Sounds like capstone city planning. Say it again. Joint
Concept for integrated campaigning.
Okay. That sounds like capstone cities to me.
Yeah.
I was finding stuff about investment firms that operate in Taiwan. So that's very Joe Biden as well.
Yeah, it is. All right.
Rubik's Cube. He was playing with the Rubik's Cube. Now we have Rubik's Cubes. And clearly this isn't a mental hospital. You wouldn't have ketchup and mustard and stuff. Sharp objects.
I got to point out, that's an MK. Mustard Ketchup Ultra.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, seriously.
Oddly enough, too, they're both in yellow containers. I don't know why that would be. I don't know. There's everything about this scene is just bizarre and probably could probably spend a long time on it. Like, what time is on the clock here? And this is Donna, his manager from the gift shop. And she's holding a Scarab plushie.
Yep.
And it's even got this like solar disc on it.
Nice.
And she says, I'd be a lot happier if he pulled some bloody O's.
Which is 15, which is the devil card. And I see this whole scene as a black mass. They are partaking in a sacrament. The whole thing is a ritualistic black mass. This is absolutely an inversion of a holy sacrament. It's so unholy. It's wild.
Yeah, they're a big international non-governmental organization. All of this is so weird. I just grabbed screenshots from this, not to maybe overanalyze it, but just to point out little details in the scenery, how she's drawing a hummingbird conchu head. Very creepy.
That's the lady who did the passports. That's the same lady that helped Layla get her passports in order.
And then right after we see her, we see Mark, and he sees himself in the mirror. Here's this goldfish. Here's a book with the number 9 on it. Maybe something about the Ennead here. And this looks like some ecliptic stuff, some zodiacal procession stuff. Don't know what this art's supposed to represent. But then we immediately see Layla, and she's eating a marshmallow.
Dude, okay, so
yeah,
everybody I don't know, all over the internet decided that she's eating Turkish delight. I don't know where they've possibly gotten this from. It's clearly a marshmallow. And now I get that it plays the same role as Turkish delight, kind of in the Narnia kind of way. Also the ambrosia of the gods kind of thing. But that is a fucking marshmallow.
Yeah, buddy. Yep.
Yeah, totally. We've already broke down the marshmallow in previous episodes, so this is just like a returning deal.
Same thing.
Yep. It hails back to the official health of the OFI, of the snipping the tip to make sure everything stays clean.
Oh.
And
so, okay, I'm sorry. The gears are working. I don't know if I should say where it's going yet, because will derail the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to point out the drawing with the triangles. An image very similar to that will come up in the cut scene at the very end where there is a mirror that is up in a corner that they have in hospitals, so you can see around the corner. It's a convex mirror in the corner, which will come up later. So it is foreshadowing a very subtle but very profound ingredient that we'll weave in a little bit. Yeah, I didn't go onto this one. There's a lot going on with that we could probably dig into.
Yeah, they won with I2. Interestingly enough.
Wow, that yeah.
They won bingo with I2.
Very interesting.
Yeah, there's a the squares that they won with 33, 86, 65, 55. Pretty relevant numbers, but too much to explore here. And Mark falls out of his chair and he's holding a Moon Knight action figure, and he's chained to his wheelchair by the right ankle. So this is calling back to the symbolism of the right ankle that we covered in the initial episodes.
So they're trying to get him to believe that the Moon Knight, his other realm, his other reality, is the dream. But clearly what we're seeing is these are the things that are not tangible in reality. Like you can't have these numbers in bingo or whatever. It's clearly a dream.
And
but
not all these other people. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. That's all right. Yeah, not all these people. They're all the same characters, like Wizard of Oz kind of thing.
Totally, Wizard of Oz, yeah.
But
and in a Jungian sense, it's kind of showing that everything is in your head.
Right, exactly.
And this is followed, but this is taken to nihilistic levels by Harrow in a moment. So
I want to point out the fact that everything is white. And the last time we were, working our way around the calendar, we were entering into the winter seasons. So there is that aspect, that sterilized white, and the fact that we just left Capricorn, we just passed the winter solstice. So we are totally in the winter, the white of winter.
Perfect. Yeah. We've gone through the Janus. We're in the January point.
Which kind of fits that semicircle of the art. In the way that I memorize my zodiac, it is the bottom left quadrant that is the winter. That's how yep. That definitely is the winter time in my mental zodiac, not in everybody's.
So then Harrow is now his psychologist in this place. And he's talking about the movie that Stephen watches all the time and says, the plot makes a real meal out of a lunar god. You used to work for one, right? But just like that choice of words, makes a meal out of it. We're talking about a lunar god, which is a disc.
And a plot, your plot, it's the
course.
placenta.
Oh, yeah.
It's your plot. That's your lot in life. That's your domain. Yeah, the plotter is the wheel for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that's
the navigation, the navel.
Yeah, that quote right there. Do you know who said that Saturday? When we were talking in the weave, that we don't live out there. We live in here. And he's quoting Jung right there. That
nice.
We don't live in the mental world, the material world. We live in the psychic world.
Yeah.
Whatever you're experiencing is in here.
He's even got the Carl Jung glasses and mustache.
Yeah.
Good call.
I mean, he's dressed up like Carl Jung right now.
Yes. And
doesn't he say something about he quotes the movie about going to the depths. And,
no tree can ascend to the heights of heaven if it doesn't descend to the depths of hell.
Right.
So it's his exact same shtick that Harrow has had the whole time, which is that it's your trauma is what gives you power.
Yep. And that is a Carl Jung quote as well. And the painting on the wall is a city in Switzerland, where Carl Jung is from.
Oh yeah, I didn't grab a screenshot of that, but they definitely made that prominent point to keep showing that. But I was at like 80 screenshots, so I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yes. And Carl Jung is Agent 448. Alan Dulles called in Carl Jung and gave him an agent number. So he worked for the early CIA. And so it is quite rewarding to know that they consider Carl Jung a patron saint. And that is a two-sided sword. It works for us, and it can be used against us as well. A lot to think about with that.
And when Hera was talking about living in the psychic world, not a material world, that everything depends on context and perception, he holds up a pen, and tells you what it is. A pen is, to me, a writing utensil. To my dog, it's a chew toy. It just had to bring up the dog, like very key specific choice of words. The canine.
Right. And that's the abs tool. A chew
but also,
toy.
Who chews on a penis?
Totally.
A moil.
Totally.
During the circumcision ritual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
these fucking guys.
It's not a stretch.
These fucking guys.
I know, right? There's also some good imagery in this scene. Oh, there's his gaiters, right? He's still wearing the gaiters.
Yeah.
I was really wondering who the heck this deity is supposed to be, because it looks like it's got horns, right? But I've never really seen this lattice thing above the uraeus and the hood. Like, that's new to me. I don't know who that's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it also, the missing leg and the missing one leg and the right leg and the left hand.
Yeah.
That is very much the Masonic initiation, where they roll up one sleeve and one pant leg. Very initiated ingredient. And all of the ingredients in the scene are hailing back to the opening scene, episode 1 at the very beginning, where he's putting all the glass in his sandals, because the table is glass. He's got his cane here. He's got his sandals getting flashed. They've got. It
also flashes back to the scene where he's talking to HR and they're offering to send him to a mental institution.
Right. Yep.
It makes sense why the walls are that way too. If it's in a dream, if you've ever noticed like how borders in the back of dreams, if you've ever practiced some lucid dreaming and try and remember your environment, like the stuff on the edges gets loose. See how in the background the walls are decorated. I mean, they're not decorated. It's loose. It's like it's coming apart in each of the sections.
Especially, you can see it right here.
Right. Yeah, that's a good.
Right there, that scene. I just want to point out that we have one Coptic jar on the left and 3 over here on the right, making a 1-3.
Yeah, I wanted to point out the canopic jars, or the canophic jars.
Yeah, buddy.
When it shows them up close, Hera is saying, take inventory of your feelings, Mark. Well, an inventory of your feelings, an inventory is like a list or catalog, or
a gut
what
check.
what you have stored. Your organs that would be kept in canopic jars, organs are where your feelings are stored.
That's right.
These are like storage devices for feelings in a spiritual, metaphorical sense. And he's saying that right here. I thought that was interesting.
Yes. And even file, the word file, to file away, is to keep inventory. And file as in to love and to feel. It's all related powerfully.
File. Philemon. Carl Jung and Philemon.
That's what's up. Nice.
Then Mark breaks the glass, more broken glass, to try, and he escapes from this room. Some thugs come in who we've seen before, Harrow's main two henchmen. And then he stumbles through the hallways until he finds this sarcophagus.
Just a real subtle note that I caught was that he hits Fitzgerald in the nuts and he bites Kennedy. Isn't that the other Fitzgerald and Kennedy, right?
But Fitzgerald wouldn't have nuts because it's a chick.
Billy. Billy is the boy. He hits the boy in the nuts and he bites the girl in her arm.
Yeah.
And so a vasectomy.
The same two that came and arrested him earlier.
Yes.
In the plot.
The same two cops. So the boy gets checked in his generative location. And strangely enough, isn't it, what do they call it? Is it an IUD that a woman gets put into her arm so that she can have baby prevention, birth control. It's an injection into the arm that a woman gets.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I just thought that was very interesting that the man gets it in the junk and the woman gets it in the arm, and those are both the locations where you would have a procedure done so you never have children again. Just a real nuanced aspect there.
That's creepy to me, but that's a really amazing amazing that you noticed that. Only you. But I didn't even know that there was IUDs that go in the arm. So
yeah, I think it's copper. It's like a copper thing. It's all weird looking.
Yeah, it's a subdermal implant.
It's called Nexplanon.
Whoa, that's weird.
Nexplanon, a small, thin, flexible birth control implant. 3 years of continuous pregnancy prevention. So there's that. Set it and don't sweat it. Set it. That's what it says. Like, that's their tagline on their website from Planned Parenthood. My God. Okay. He finds the sarcophagus. This reminds me of the tracing board big time because when he pops out, he's in black. And here's Stephen in black and Mark in white. And there's even this checkerboard pattern behind them.
The point of exchange. They exchange a hug.
Yeah.
It's a black and white again.
I feel like this episode is so packed that like most of my steam was spent in the first half in terms of like just analyzing and taking notes. And by this point I was like, okay, we're almost there. They see a third sarcophagus, the tertium quid. It's red. I'm sure Gabriel probably has something to say about that. This is hinting at the third identity, the three souls that some spiritual traditions hold that we have. What do you think, bud?
I love it. That's exactly what I was thinking. The third something, the tertium quid.
Trinity.
Yep. And it's, and it's even the take inventory of your feelings. Remember, he just got done saying that. And here they are. They're like, oh, there's something in there that I don't want to, and both of them ignore it. They both breeze right past it. And as they're walking down the hallway, the lamps above are swaying to and fro. And there are 3 lamps, just like the symbol for the pawn shop that they flashed in the cutscene from, I think, episode 2. The lamps in the ceiling are very much like the pawn shop lights, signifying that castration component. So there is really something. I mean, the tertium quid says it all. Like, if people haven't looked up tertium quid, go find it because this is the third something. This is the placenta. This is the removal, the aspects that were removed, and you better take inventory of what has been fully instilled and what has been not instilled. There's a lot to that. It is so deeply symbolic. It's fascinating.
I just got into a side tangent of like which Egyptian gods represent which zodiac signs. Man, that's a whole nother thing to talk about later. But I did find it interesting that Libra is Anubis.
Whoa. That makes strange sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're about to see Tarouet. She shows up at the very end scene. And she's a goddess of fertility, oddly enough, right after you mentioned the whole birth control thing.
Right.
And she shows up.
And I got to point out, they keep putting those the fire alarms. They keep putting them in extremely strategic locations. So here we have the issue of fertility, and we have this alarm. This I see it as very predictive of the Roe versus Wade issue.
Yeah, the whole thing is predictive of a lot of stuff, isn't it? It's not really predictive. It's just telling us, it's a revelation of the method. They're telling us what they're doing. They're making you feel like you're crazy, making you feel like people are unhinged, like everything's a dream, that we can't even believe what we see in the news and all this shit. Yeah, man.
Yeah. And it also seems to whisper the, you remember the Paradise Fires when they had those, what looked like fire asps or insects, like flaming a swarm of fire acting intelligently, turning at a right angle exactly. I don't know if anybody else saw that footage, but with the Paradise Fires, there are swarms of cinders, flaming cinders, making tactical maneuvers and working their way through structures and burning only the houses and leaving the trees untouched. Just something on my mind when I see these things.
The other thing, okay, so this is Tarouet, all right? And I was doing a little bit of research into her, and Mario will love this. She apparently is linked to the northern sky.
Oh, yeah.
Because of her connection to the navel, because she has to do with birth and midwifery.
Yeah, buddy. Hell yeah.
So interesting.
I shot you a graphic there. This is my last one that I put together just before they open the door and see Tarouet, which I'm going to have a hard time.
We're going to definitely talk more about her in the next one.
Yes.
I'll do more research.
She's a big to do. So
not just because she's a hippo.
Right. So this is just before they open the door. They flash ever so quickly. There is a 24 spoke wheel on the ceiling.
Oh yeah, I totally saw that.
And it just seems so intentional that there would be this image on the ceiling. And so it's 24 spokes, which is the same as the Rotary International Club, which is a tripartite X symbol in and of its own right.
Pretty sure it's Tarouet that is on the zodiac down here that you zoomed in on.
You got it, man. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So 24, X is the 24th letter, and signifying the wheel card, the Wheel of Fortune. She has the Wheel of Fortune on her head as her headdress. And so I pull out the Dendera Zodiac, and I look at that center, the center place of the Dendera Zodiac, and there is Tarouet in that center location, holding that knife, that blade that we were talking about earlier. All of this is big props to Mario for bringing this to all of our attention. This is why there is castration, circumcision as a key ingredient to all birth rituals when you come into this world. When your place center is removed, And this is the cut scene. This is the cut scene. They are literally, she says, hi, which is the first syllable of the God of the Jews, is hey, or no, the final syllable, Yad He Bav He. It's got a Yahweh implication to the word high, and that's the end. They cut out, and sure enough, Tauret is depicted with a cutting implement that I'm gonna bother Mario by the next time we get together, and I'll have all these implements in their names memorized.
Yeah, we got it. We could definitely push further into that symbolism. I really want to look more into the Dendera zodiac, or the Tantra zodiac is a more proper name, because it comes from that temple that I was showing the Hathor pillars from. That's where they pillaged it to take it to the Louvre. It's from that same temple with the four-headed Hathors.
And we talked about the Louvre with the last episode with Homeboy in the Belphegor in the Louvre.
In the Louvre, man. And then
So
that's
fun.
exactly what they were showing in that scene too, was the glass pyramids, essentially saying, this is the Louvre.
Yeah.
So wild. So wild. So much correspondence.
It's
We
amazing.
did it, guys. We made it to the end of this episode plot-wise. Oh, man.
No, the digs will keep coming.
Yes.
I know.
So we got two more, right? 5 and 6.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we got two more. And
Get our work cut out for us.
I think this is where it's gonna get really interesting. And like I was saying, like I mentioned last night, we're looking into the void, and the void is looking back.
Well, speaking of, like, this is when I said at the beginning that this episode is symbolic of Osiris entering the underworld. I mean, we're about to find out that where they're at in this mental institution is the Duat, which is Osiris's home. Osiris is the Lord of Duat.
Yeah,
and he's reunited with his twin on the other side here, So much here that relates to our whole, like, placenta casserole that we've been cooking for months.
Sweet.
Nice.
And it brought in bingo. Can you believe it?
Oh yeah, there was a bingo. I didn't even think of that.
A big international non-governmental organization.
Yeah. That is wild.
Appreciate everybody that stuck around. I could tell by the currently watching Counter on Rockfin that basically people were here for it, man.
Oh, cool.
Love that. Missed the YouTube fam, but they'll get it later. Someday YouTube will let me back on. But I appreciate everyone that's willing to go to the other platform, because it's better anyway. And thank you, former Vice President Biden, for the tip. I appreciate that quite a bit.
Man,
I don't know if you realize this, but Biden is a regular on our Rockfin channel.
That's awesome. I heard him come up last time too.
Yeah. Thanks, man. What do you guys want to call it? We're pretty long in the tooth. I think it's a good time to go. Awesome to see Lucas hanging out with us the whole time. LC King.
LC King's in there?
He's been here from the jump.
Been in here.
Oh, dude.
We'll see him on a Vibrant soon.
Here, let's put LC King's masterpiece up for everybody to look at and enjoy. I just sent it to you, Chance. I'm gonna be laughing about this for months. This was brilliant. LC King, I love you, dude. This is amazing. This is so good.
It speaks for itself, but if somehow you're just listening to the audio version of this, it's Joe Biden crashing his bike into the Georgia Guidestones, and it's all rubble.
That is so priceless. Thank you, LC.
Can't
You're
beat
the best,
that,
man. Big love.
Yeah, looking forward to collab again, brother. Cool. All right, well, that's a wrap, I think, boys. Let's do it. I'll hit the music. Much love, all.
Much
See you
love,
on the next
everybody.
one. We'll
You
get
too,
to it
guys.
as soon as we can.
Yes.
It's not easy getting these prepared, but we do have fun. I love that we're doing it, and I
Yeah,
can't wait
man.
for the next one.
Very gratifying. Much love,
All right.
It's fun.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Hello. Bye-bye.